Hello everyone, if you're new to my channel, consider liking and subscribing. It will make me feel wonderful if you do that. Thanks. By the way, I also have another Naruto and Luffy fanfiction channel. If you are interested, link is in the description. Deadly Drinking Pirate by Darren. Ace was wondering about that sake he stole from those pirates before allowing his little brother Luffy drink it when they became brothers. And now Luffy has gained a new ability, one that defies the laws of devil fruits and yet makes him even stronger than before. Watch this drunk-proof pirate become the king of them all. Mature Luffy duel. Devil fruit. Luffy/Harim, I don't own anything, adios.
Luffy dropped the heavily bruised Sanji onto the ground in an unceremonious way. "Thank you for showing me the way to this house, Sanji." Luffy spoke in a cold tone. "Now see to it that you will be able to drag yourself back to the King's Gourd. And don't count on anyone giving a hand. Not after your disgraceful behavior and—" Luffy then turned around slowly and made Sanji see the devil staring him down. "After what you said to Nami. You are no gentleman, but a well-dressed pervert. Be thankful that we still need a cook, Sanji." The blonde cook could only whimper and drag his broken body back to the ship. And on the way, reflect on how he dared to compliment Nami when she had to lose her shirt. Saying such words to a girl who has been through hellfire, literally, and having her underwear showing was what only perverts will do. Now Nami will never even consider him to be a gentleman anymore, just a pervert and a ladies' man slave. Meanwhile, inside the wax house, Luffy saw that the house was still standing and there was another picnic basket. Looking inside, Luffy had found a Den Den Mushi, a transponder snail used for purposes relatable to a phone or camera, with the number 0 painted on its shell. Then the Den Den Mushi sprang to life with a rain. But Luffy knew just who was on the other side. "Hello, Mr. Zero." Luffy begun and had braced himself for a phone call that has his crew's life on the line. "Is that you, Mr. 3? Your voice sounds worse than ever." Luffy never heard such an arrogant tone that still cried of confidence and great power anyways. "No, my name is Monkey D. Luffy. You might have heard of me as the rookie from the East Blue that has just entered the Grand Line." Luffy responded and waited for Crocodile to reply. "So you're the one they call Straw Hat Luffy, and the Liber Glade. Seems that even the big shots of the East Blue were no match for you," Crocodile said. Then again, they were always strong by the standards of the world's weakest ocean. "I am not here to talk about the East Blue. I want two things," Luffy retorted. "First, I want you to stop sending your agents after us. It will get old and soon, you won't have anyone left to throw away for your stupid ambition." Luffy listed off, and before Crocodile could try to speak up, "Second, I want you to know that once me and my crew get the princess to Alabasta, you will never seize control of the Sandy Kingdom." There was silence over the line. "You dare talk to me, Crocodile of the Warlords? I have killed plenty of overconfident rookies for less. And why would you try to turn me in? I am the country's hero." "I thought that a pirate like you couldn't care less about being anyone's hero," Luffy retorted out of the blue once again. "You're too prideful to resort to such measures. That will be one of the factors of your downfall." "Huh?" Crocodile cut Luffy off right at that last word. "My downfall, like you will measure to someone like me? I am Crocodile." "Much better," Luffy said, and the faint sound of Crocodile grinding his teeth could barely be heard on the line. "But yes, what you are going to do is going to be your downfall. And it started as soon as I found out who you are and that the princess has asked of me to help her country. And why would a pirate help out a princess? We are just filthy outlaws that the world will be cleaner without." Crocodile was slowly losing his temper. "And what exactly did the world government offer to a greedy pig like you that you didn't refuse the positin as one of the warlords?" Luffy never expected an answer and thus was not surprised to hear silence. "But back to the point. Your assassins have failed their mission the moment they landed on Little Garden. And after hearing enough about you, don't think that I will show you mercy when we fight in Alabasta. If we do, then there won't be anything left of you when I am done." Crocodile shouted out, and Luffy smirked to see that he had gotten under Crocodile's skin. "Is that a promise? Then I will be looking forward to it, Sir Crocodile. And don't send anyone after us or else I will tell on you to the Marines." Luffy finished his conversation and hung up before Crocodile could respond. XXXXX location unknown. That arrogant brat. Crocodile was still in a bad mood. So much that he crushed the receiver on the Den Den Mushi that he was using to try and contact Mr. 3 on Little Garden. As for Crocodile, most his features are concealed in the darkness of his office. The only clue to where he was is the large creature that is being petted by Miss Sunday. It had the appearance of a regular crocodile that had something in the shape of a banana growing out of their heads. "Foo foo foo." Miss Sunday giggled to see the scene unfold. "I knew that boy will be entertaining. I never get to see you so hot under the collar. Shut up, Miss Sunday. I am in the mood to kill anyone. Unless there isn't any pirates invading this blasted country, then I will kill you. Crocodile retorted back and Miss Sunday giggled even more. Does anything faze her? I did hear that a pirate crew led by Papu has been seen lately, Miss Sunday said, and Crocodile scoffed. That swine? Oh well, a complete crew is better than nothing. Crocodile sighed deeply. He was getting a bit tired of always going after the no-name rookies who think that they can take on the 7 warlords. Plenty had said that the likes of himself are only as good as government dogs, and you better leave my sights and see to it that Mr. 2 will go to Little Garden. And Miss Sunday stopped at her latest step on the staircase and noticed that Crocodile had halted in his speech, almost like he suddenly shut down. But then, forget about the Straw Hats and instead get him to kill the failure Mr. 3. And why would you do that? Weren't you going to? Miss Sunday was actually confused this time but then got Crocodile to glare at her. Are you turning traitor already, Miss Sunday? Do you really doubt my instincts and decide not to follow my orders? Crocodile was still the prideful character and Miss Sunday had lost her voice once she was cut off. She had no idea what was going on, so Miss Sunday just nodded and moved up past the staircase. Just what did happen to Crocodile? He acted like someone had suddenly entered his mind. But his voice and personality hadn't changed. I never heard of such a power existing, even in the Grand Line. Miss Sunday thought to herself but decided to look into it later. Meanwhile, back on Little Garden. Well, now what? Zoro asked, finding one of the stones looking rather comfy compared to what he had to go through. Not with Mr. 3 getting the drop on him and trapping all the Straw Hats in his waxwork. And then there were Zoro's legs. He tried to cut them off so he will get free and kill Mr. 3, but then he found the wax hardening his body and covering him like powder on a donut. Must be because his conscience couldn't allow him to do such a thing in front of his friends and the cruel Mr. 3. His pride just wouldn't bear the thought of allowing that Candleman to see that he got into Zoro. I don't know. Nami was also upset about all this. And the only thing worth seeing is the giants actually not fighting every occasion and that Mr. 3 was only in great pain but not dead. Somehow having the Candleman alive was far better than killing him. If we had a year to wait, then that will be our only way off the island. But we don't have a year. We need to get to my island as soon as possible. We only have hours to spare, not an entire year. The Straw Hats sighed in annoyance to hear Vivi mouth off again and again. If we are here and like this, then it's my fault. And Nami then silenced by walking over to Vivi and pull on her cheek. None of that anymore. After letting go of Vivi, Nami sighed to see that everyone was trying to avoid looking at her. Not that she looked scary or angry but underdressed. She complained about the heat and took off her shirt. Nami then had to ignore the feeling of having the whole world stare at what shirt. That is until, hey guys. Sorry it took so long. Everyone was relieved to say the least to see Luffy arrive from the jungle and with 2 things being dragged along. One was Sanji, still tied and beaten up from before. The other was a slain saber-toothed tiger, one that everyone took cuts out to fill their empty bellies. Wow. That got everyone to nearly jump out their skin, and it turns out, Sanji was still conscious, enough to ignore the pain and open his eyes, to see Nami still half-dressed. But before anyone could try to knock out the cook, Luffy did it for them and practically drilled Sanji's head into the jungle ground. Thanks for reminding me, Sanji. Luffy said sarcastically and took out his jacket, handing over to Nami. She didn't need to be told, and yet Nami didn't take the jacket for nothing. She sneaked in a kiss after actually covering herself up. Anyways, I was just finishing having a conversation over this Den Mushi's phone line. Luffy took out the same snail-operated phone that he found in Mr. 3's wax house. And everyone saw the symbol on its shell. That showed a typical skull from a Jolly Roger that had a pair of fencing sabers for the crossbones. There was even the pair of fancy purple wings to complete the Baroque works Jolly Roger. In case you were wondering, I spoke to Mr. Zero himself. Now there is great tension in the air, coming from the likes of Vivi, Carol and Frank. Mr. Zero.
Yes, he sure was polite at the start, but it was quite easy to get under his reptile skin. Luffy said casually, which wasn't much of a surprise to his more senior crewmates. I did tell him about what we are doing and that no matter what he does, Crocodile will fall once we arrive at Alabasta.
But then you will just send more people after us, Vivi shouted, but Luffy didn't stir. I doubt it. After all, a general is nothing without an army. If he is going to try and kill us, by throwing away more of his minions, then he will be risking whatever plan he has laid out. Luffy explained. And don't worry about it, he is not going to bother with us. I made sure of it. How can you be so sure? He is joking, right guys? Vivi called out to the other Straw Hats, but they looked away from her. Not exactly the answer she wished to receive. But then Vivi noticed that Carol and Frank were looking. They finally solved a very complex riddle. But the answer was still unbelievable. What's wrong?
Let's just say that I used what I did on Mr. 3 and his partner, only on Crocodile this time. Luffy answered, and yet, this still didn't make all this any more clear. The only ones that did understand were the former Baroque Works agents. They then went into whispering distance of the captain.
Thanks Luffy, We knew you will have it under control. Luffy could only nod and ask for some more personal space. Then Luffy started to look sheepish. Sorry about not telling you guys, but Mr. 13 kindly gave me this. Luffy then reached into his vest and pulled out a device that had the shape of an hourglass. Only that it didn't have the sand used in an hourglass or even have the glass in the shape of two capsules connected with a very narrow opening. Instead, it had the same glass capsule as a regular log pose, complete with the suspended needle. Finally, at the base was a label that said, "Alabasta, I know that you want to kill me, go ahead." But while that exact thought was clear on their faces, the Straw Hats were cursing at themselves. They had seen just how overpowering Luffy is over every single one of them. And with a deadly ability that allows Luffy's own power and strength to grow when even one is exposed to the drunken influence. They sucked it up and Nami just took it from Luffy's hand. You better hope that this Mr. 3 has at least 1,000,000 berries on his ship, otherwise you will have to sleep on a couch tonight. Luffy smirked. To any man in a relationship, that was worse than a slap on the face or a stab in the chest, right near the heart. Fair enough. Let's get ready to get on our way. Luffy then looked at the two giants who were nothing but bystanders, enjoying another example of human drama. If you want to owe us a favor, then there is one thing you can do.
XXXXX. Later, in a dark room, a little girl was awakening from a blackout episode and then noticed that there was something rough around her arms and legs that prevented much of basic motion.
She couldn't even budge from her spot with what felt a lot like rope bounding her. Then the room is filled with light, with Luffy standing near an opening in the roof of the room. This was the hull of the King's Gourd, the ship Luffy took from scratch and built himself. And Luffy knew every single inch and every dimension of this ship, including all the rooms. Now that you are awake, Miss Goldenweek, the young-looking woman gasped and tried to wiggle what really looked like rope all around body. Relax yourself and this will be completely painless. Miss Goldenweek found herself started out her wits and her attempts to get free for the time being. Now, I have accepted your comrades that you still call Mr. 5 and Miss Valentine because they were valuable in potential. The same can be said for you, not your former partner. That is why you are even on my ship. Luffy got the point, swift and simple. Potential? For what? Miss Goldenweek squeaked out and Luffy nodded. For helping even out the male-female ratio on my crew for one thing. Miss Goldenweek couldn't believe that she was held captive on a pirate's ship just so there will be more women on board. But mainly is because I heard a whisper inside that head of yours. You have a dream, do you? Miss Goldenweek didn't know what Luffy meant and tried to escape the glance of the captain. So what? Luffy only raised an eyebrow at that response. That girl-looking woman seemed to be frustrated and aggressive once Luffy had gotten underneath her exterior. Are you going to tell me that it is impossible? Everyone does. And now I have disappointed my boss, Mr. Zero, the only man that can make it happen. And he didn't care, for once in my life. You're right, he doesn't care. Luffy spoke up, and sometimes, that can be worse than what seems to be constant mocking and rejection of your dreams. Luffy continued and Miss Goldenweek growled at him. But it takes very little to faze this young man. Because at least they acknowledged that you had a dream. Crocodile didn't care because he needed the cannon fonder for his plan. Nothing that he promised you all will ever come if he does succeed, only nothing but time in jail. Miss Goldenweek was shocked. She had no idea who her boss is, only as Mr. Zero and everyone that knew his real name had been all but killed off. But to hear from Luffy that the boss was Crocodile, a member of the warlords. They are supposed to be heroes, killing off the other pirates and help out the countries under the world government. You can either believe it or try to deny it. I don't care about that, but as a man with a dream to go out to the sea, I will never laugh at someone's dream. As long as you are on my ship, you will live for your dream. Luffy then spoke up. I am not forcing you to make a decision. All I want is to let you know that every single member of my pirate crew has a dream. And dreams are one of the only reasons to live. Miss Goldenweek just looked at Luffy. She couldn't find anything to say to all that. And she remained that way for a while. A long while until, thank you, Captain. Luffy. Miss Goldenweek heard, my name is Luffy. The captain didn't bother to share what his surname is. All he wanted was the one underneath the Miss Goldenweek, that used to be a Baroque works agent. Victoria. But I will like Vicky. Luffy raised an eyebrow at that last remark but nodded, showing that he will accept the name anyways. But the moment was to be spoiled for the rest of the day when both of them heard voices out on the deck as well as hasty footprints. Captain. Nami's collapsed on the deck. She has a fever, but the look on Luffy's face scared Georgia. He looked like he just heard one of his crewmates on the verge of dying. No, Luffy whispered to himself. I hope for this not to happen, and not now. XXXXX outside, just moments ago, everyone were still recovering from what happened right after they drifted offshore of Little Garden. The monstrous goldfish that toppled even the biggest of mountains appeared. The Island Eater. Who would have thought that one of Kaya's favorite stories that Usopp made up actually came true? She sure was surprised and Usopp just tried to keep his own feelings of it hidden. A coward he may be, Usopp is also a man who takes hints and learns from the mistakes he makes from time to time. Then the crew heard the door to the cargo hull opening and out came Luffy, who looked like someone had just killed a dear friend right in front of his eyes. "See, Captain." Zoro couldn't help but shiver and stutter at the face of this thick atmosphere. Everyone else weren't doing any better. "Where is Nami? Where is my navigator? Where is my Nami?" Luffy spoke in a dark tone that said, "No time for delays or nonsense." Everyone pointed to the base of the mast where Luffy saw his girlfriend laying against it like she was a dead body. Pressing his hand against her forehead, Luffy then screamed like an animal walking into a lit fireplace. His hand had just gotten a burn alone. After a while of thinking, Luffy then knew what was going on. But he needed to be sure before jumping to conclusions, and he had to do this. "Nami, you might want to hit me after saying this, but I need to lift up your shirt," Luffy said with complete seriousness. And Nami looked like if she wasn't dizzy with a fever and that she was head over heels with her captain, she would have caved Luffy's face in. So when Luffy then moved the shirt up, to the discomfort of most of the crew, they all gasped to see a very bad bug bite. One they never noticed before. They were thinking too hard on what to do with Baroque works. "You have been bitten by the Kestia, Nami." Luffy then spoke up, letting loose his grasp on his girlfriend's shirt so her stomach won't be flashed for much longer. Like dinosaurs and saber-toothed tigers, they were thought to be extinct. They are tropical insects that might be small enough to be barely seen, but when they bite, they live visible bug bites like yours. "But bug bites don't cause a fever, Captain," Vivi brought up, and soon, everyone saw the look of dread in Luffy's eyes. "Most bug bites don't, Vivi. We are still in the Grand Line, none of you forget that." Luffy responded and everyone else on the ship nodded. But the Kestia were once deadly insects that once they bite into the flesh of their targets, they spread a virus. Now the air is getting thick with tension and dread that spread through their hearts like wildfire. It is known as the 5-day disease, called that because within 5 days of infection, the contaminated will be fully eaten inside out and die. "Damn it, Luffy!" Sanji roared like a bear, finding his food supply stolen right under his nose. "If you know about this, then why haven't you treated Nami? You are supposed to know everything about the Grand Line, and I thought you will get us ready and Nami is going to die. What is wrong, wi? Choke. Sanji ranted on and on like an angry fool until Luffy, out of the blue, grasped the cook by the throat in an effort to shut him up and get his attention. "Sanji, I thought that I was clear on how the Kestia were thought to be extinct. And the Kestia are the only causes of the 5-day disease, so everyone thought that the illness was also extinct."
Luffy started. "I will admit that I know more about the Grand Line for someone that never left the East Blue, but you had no right to say such things to some who is not happy about this either, Sanji." The crew were wondering, just who is Luffy and what else about him will surprise them. Even if you go to the best clinics in the East Blue, they won't have a vaccine for this illness. The 5-day disease is a Grand Line illness, why would the cure be found in the East Blue?
Nobody answered. And the silence was broken when Luffy felt his hand getting tired, holding Sanji over the deck, so the captain released the cook for the latter to catch his breath. "So what do we do, Captain? It is your cue." Vivi then spoke up. Yes, it is. There is a way to cure Nami." Luffy spoke before getting Nami off the base of the mast and into her arms. She showed signs that the posture was at least slightly more comfortable. On the way to Alabasta is Drum Island. Years ago, it was famous and most sought out in the entire Grand Line for its system of doctors. And those doctors were skilled enough to cure nearly any illness, both from the Grand Line and the other Blue Seas. "Do you think that they can cure Nami? I thought that you said the 5-day disease was thought to be extinct." Carol spoke this time. She had grown to like the navigator and found her presence to be like close friends. The ones from the Blue Seas also, though the dinosaurs were extinct. But those who grew up in the Grand Line will know that Little Garden will harbor the supposed extinct animals, plants, reptiles and insects. Luffy explained. "And any good doctor will have a cure ready, even if it will never be used for another 100 years. I will make a bet that even one doctor on Drum Island will have the cure for the 5-day disease in storage." And just like that, the next course of action became clear.
All they can do is follow Luffy's path to this, Drum Island, and hope that a cure for Nami can be found there. "You have been bitten by the Kestia, Nami." Luffy then spoke up, letting loose his grasp on his girlfriend's shirt so her stomach won't be flashed for much longer. Like dinosaurs and saber-toothed tigers, they were thought to be extinct. They are tropical insects that might be small enough to be barely seen, but when they bite, they live visible bug bites like yours.
"But bug bites don't cause a fever, Captain," Vivi brought up, and soon, everyone saw the look of dread in Luffy's eyes. "Most bug bites don't, Vivi. We are still in the Grand Line, none of you forget that."
Luffy responded and everyone else on the ship nodded. But the Kestia were once deadly insects that once they bite into the flesh of their targets, they spread a virus. Now the air is getting thick with tension and dread that spread through their hearts like wildfire. It is known as the 5-day disease, called that because within 5 days of infection, the contaminated will be fully eaten inside out and die.
"Damn it, Luffy!" Sanji roared like a bear, finding his food supply stolen right under his nose. "If you know about this, then why haven't you treated Nami? You are supposed to know everything about the Grand Line, And I thought you will get us ready and Nami is going to die. What is wrong wi? Asterisk choke. Sanji ranted on and on like an angry fool until Luffy, out of the blue, grasped the cook by the throat in an effort to shut him up and get his attention. Sanji, I thought that I was clear on how the Kestia were thought to be extinct. And the Kestia are the only causes of the 5-day disease, so everyone thought that the illness was also extinct.
Luffy started. I will admit that I know more about the Grand Line for someone that never left the East Blue, but you had no right to say such things to some who is not happy about this either, Sanji. The crew were wondering, just who is Luffy and what else about him will surprise them. Even if you go to the best clinics in the East Blue, they won't have a vaccine for this illness. The 5-day disease is a Grand Line illness, why would the cure be found in the East Blue?
Nobody answered. And the silence was broken when Luffy felt his hand getting tired, holding Sanji over the deck, so the captain released the cook for the latter to catch his breath. So what do we do, Captain? It is your cue. Vivi then spoke up. Yes it is. There is a way to cure Nami. Luffy spoke before getting Nami off the base of the mast and into her arms. She showed signs that the posture was at least slightly more comfortable. On the way to Alabasta is Drum Island. Years ago, it was famous and most sought out in the entire Grand Line for its system of doctors. And those doctors were skilled enough to cure nearly any illness, both from the Grand Line and the other Blue Seas. Do you think that they can cure Nami? I thought that you said the 5-day disease was thought to be extinct. Carol spoke this time. She had grown to like the navigator and found her presence to be like close friends. The ones from the Blue Seas also, though the dinosaurs were extinct. But those who grew up in the Grand Line will know that Little Garden will harbor the supposed extinct animals, plants, reptiles and insects. Luffy explained. And any good doctor will have a cure ready, even if it will never be used for another 100 years. I will make a bet that even one doctor on Drum Island will have the cure for the 5-day disease in storage. And just like that, the next course of action became clear. All they can do is follow Luffy's path to this Drum Island, and hope that a cure for Nami can be found there. Presenting our captain, Wapol the Tin Pirate, Luffy and the Straw Hats couldn't find the words for this silly and stupid attack on this ship. Or even the captain presented. You seem to be just regular pirates, but there could always be something about you underneath, Wapol said, eating a piece of meat off a fancy knife. But then he bite off that chuck along with the blade it was resting on. Wapol is an overweight man with an unusual appearance. He has dark violet hair and a cylinder-shaped jaw made up of tin plates, hence his epithet. He dresses in tin plate armor and a hooded cape made from kind of skin. He was also wearing brown thick gloves. He spotted a pair of purple and orange woolen shorts and a brown belt around his waist and a pair of thick short boots. No regular man can just eat the knife and not get harmed by it. Luffy remarked, he might be a glutton but he knows what he couldn't and shouldn't eat. Zoro, Alvida and Jin were not looking any better about it. I'm getting a mouth ache just by watching. Usopp had to add his own 2 cents, while trying not to raise his arms right in front of his crew. And especially not the one from a ship that appeared out of the ocean. And all this started when Zoro was on his patrol duty and called out to everyone else on the deck at the time. He said that he saw someone standing on water. Luffy and the others were trying to ignore the freezing cold and snow that fell on the King's Gourd for the second time. Luffy said that they weren't sailing into a storm but that they were getting closer to Drum Island. He called it a Winter Island. Vivi then came out and explained to the crew what Luffy meant. She told them that even though the Grand Line is supposed to be chaotic and didn't follow any of the rules for weather or navigating, it did have some certain patterns. For one, each island has a climate that is based off the 4 seasons. An island retains that climate every day of the year. But while that was smoothing for the crew in the cold, they never forgot what Nami did before she was sent into her cabin. She actually helped the crew avoid a Grand Line typhoon. And weather on the Grand Line is supposed to be unpredictable. Luffy then kissed Nami full on the mouth, shameless in public too. He then said, I told you that there is no one replacing Nami as our navigator. She has been ready for the Grand Line for years. Vivi then realized what Luffy meant. Nami doesn't predict the weather by tools, but by her body. Nami has trained her senses to pick up even the smallest changes in wind direction, temperature and air pressure. After all, weather can only happen by a delicate balance of each in order to occur. It took a lot of practice but Nami was able to tell what weather is to happen next and that was how she was able to sense that typhoon before it happened. But then there was the man standing on water. XXXXX. He was a man who is a bit taller than average. He has wavy lips and a sad expression. He wears a checkered jester-like green-blue costume with purple lining at the end of the sleeves. A white winter cape with purple lining, that is tied against his chest, and gray buttons, with a light brown bow and a bag of arrows on his back. He has dark green pants, and blue shoes with white buckles. After an awkward chat, the Straw Hats were shocked to see that this guy was not standing on water. He was merely standing on top a submerged ship that suddenly emerged and shifted back into sailing mode right in front of the King's Gourd. And before they knew it, they were surrounded by pirates wearing coats on their own ship. Now then, Wapol said, tossing what was left of that knife into his mouth while standing on one of the railings. We will like to go to Drum Island. Do any of you have an eternal pose set to that island? You seem to be going in that location. I am the captain of this ship, so I will be asking the questions. Luffy said in an irritated tone, given that the guards will poke him with their guns even when he tried to scratch his chin. Why are you all on my ship? What do you want with the king's gourd, and why aren't you at your kingdom, ruling it like a tyrant? This never gets old, but the other Straw Hats were not the ones shocked anymore. It was their unwelcome and uninvited visitors that were baffled at how a random pirate knew that they came from Dumb Kingdom. If you have no answer, then scram. This, of course, was only a sample of overpowering presence. Just enough to try and scare away off the pirates. Not now, I am still hungry. Wapol foolishly and stubbornly retorted, just like a spoiled kid in a grown-up's body. But when his mouth enlarged to impossible limits, Luffy painfully grasped and clamped his rubbery fingers around Wapol's lips. Hey, let go of Captain Wapol. He needs to eat to satisfy his. One of the goons was more foolish than Wapol, and yet he didn't get the chance to see out his captain when Luffy cut him off. His Baku Baku no Mi. Munch munch fruit. Luffy spoke, shocking everyone this time. The name for a devil fruit is always a giveaway to what it can bestow to the user. I have heard of it. It allows the user to be able to consume any substance, toxic or not, dangerous or not, edible and inedible. But I also heard that it takes this phrase literally. You're what you eat. Luffy droned off like he was reading a rather burning book out loud. Now get lost. Luffy then turned to face the opposite direction and used the elastically and sheer strength of his arm and fingers, still keeping Wapol's mouth shut, to fling the tin pirate into distance. Then he turned to the remaining tin pirates. You better hurry and collect your captain. Akuma no Mi. Devil fruit. Users don't last even a minute in the cruel and merciless sea. Finally, that was enough to scare the intruding pirates off the king's gourd, and they hurried to try and save their captain. Whatever they succeed or not, they should be too busy to bother the Straw Hats again. And they never did, on the sea that is. XXXXX. Pretty soon, an island that looked like it came out of a snow globe or something was in the horizon. The Straw Hats were still working hard on shoving the snow, keeping the ship on course and to make Nami's condition the least painful as possible. It has already been 3 days since Nami was bitten on Little Garden. Things are not looking so good for her unless they find a doctor, today. Follow the snowfall. You really are a little kid, Captain. Then again, you weren't wrong. Luffy just chuckled as he took a short break after a couple of hours of shoving and taking rounds, looking after his girl and navigator. I wasn't wrong yet. You refused to say such things about yourself, Kuro. Luffy turned to see the same pirate strategist that seemed to have been out of action for a while. And you really got everyone thinking you jumped ship again with your ridiculous long nap. What can I say, Captain? I am a cat and cats do sleep whenever they like and as long as they want. Kuro joked before getting comfortable with his new all-black winter outfit that was similar to his old attire. Only the jacket and long pants were replaced with a coat and winter slacks, woolly like a lamb. Best of all, he didn't have the pair of golden, poop things on both sides. It disgusted the girls way too many times. And what about our pet otter? What did you think of him? Luffy then brought up that no one has seen the former Mr. 13, or his vulture partner, Miss Friday. Then again, they were wondering, Sanji included, where the cooked bird for the dinner of the night they left Whiskey Peaks. He is not bad company once you give him a hot bowl of Donburi, Kuro said, and I like his choice of weapons. A pair of bivalve seashells with short claws along the front edge. Luffy nodded. I noticed those weapons. They have been sharpened to the point I can be sure they could cut at the wax that Mr. 3 makes. Luffy remarked and then changed the subject. I am sure that you can learn a few more things about him. After all, he and his former partner were trained and entrusted by a warlord to be his messenger. Ah, Crocodile. Kuro replied. He had to get caught up as he did miss out on the events surrounding Reverse Mountain, Whiskey Peaks and Little Garden. He has gotten my respect for grouping together outlaws and keep his operations a secret, even from the world government and its investigation officers, such as CP9. But no longer once we get Nami healed and finally arrive in Alabasta. Then again, I told my crew that I will not leave Drum Island without a doctor. Luffy said, and Kuro only needed a second to figure out why. Why is it that as we are now approaching Drum Island, we are the only sailors in a 10-meter radius? I thought you said that Drum Island was a hot spot for doctors to learn and patients to be healed. Kuro then replied. But he noticed that Luffy's calm and relaxed expression turned completely sour. It would seem that things have changed for Drum Island. Luffy said no more and Kuro just left with it. And after another while of sailing straight and shoving snow, the King's Gourd finally arrived at the Winter Island. But then the welcome community showed up. Halt, pirates. You are not setting another foot on our island. Scram. One of the men in the large crowd shouted, armed to the teeth like the rest. But when nobody moved a muscle. We mean it, scram or die. Another one from the crowd happened to have a rifle compared to the spears and farm tools. I said, scram? Then he foolishly shot at the Straw Hats and it also happened to be Luffy. But the captain didn't respond, not that the bullet actually did anything to his rubber body. Then he started to move, making the crowd on edge. However, what Luffy did, nobody saw it coming. "Please," Luffy shouted while he bowed on his deck, his forehead touching the wood of the ship. "Our friend is sick and dying. We need the help of a doctor that can be found here, please. Like we will help pirates like you. How do we know that you are not lying?" Another man from the crowd shouted and the other cheered in agreement. But then, "Here now, there will be none of that. Nope, liar," will bow his head with such honesty. "I believe him." A large man came from behind the crowds and the locals seemed to know him. Dalton. Dalton is an imposing man, with slicked black hair and a goatee. He wears a long, white fur-lined green tunic and has armor plates on his arms. These plates are retained on his forelegs when assuming his full bison form. Sometimes he covers his head with a green and white fur-lined hat, equipped with ear flaps against Drum Island's intense cold, and he always wears long boots. He carries his weapon of choice, an extra-large spade, in a sheath that hangs on his back. "I am sorry about our cold welcome, but the island and its people hate pirates more than most," Dalton said. "If your friend is terribly ill, then we will let onshore so we can look at her." Dalton then signaled for the crowd to make way while the Straw Hats carefully carried Nami out of the captain's quarters. But someone was needed to watch the ship. Zoro, Karoo the Duck and Koro volunteered for personal reasons. And also the otter wanted to stay since the cold temperatures and snowfall are especially dangerous for an otter like him. And so the other Straw Hats left for the village. But any hopes of making sure that this Drum Island were dashed when Dalton responded to such a question with this as an answer. "I am sorry, but this island has no name. XXXXX. Her temperature is 106 degrees. Dalton shouted in disbelief. They were in his house that had a bed for Nami to rest in. And the crew saw an increase in Nami's fever, and that is not a good sign at all. That is not good. If it keeps up, her organs will overload and fail. "We know Mr. Dalton," Vivi said. She was hoping a cold wet cloth will help, but that was just wishful thinking. The captain had already determined Nami's condition. She only has about a day and a half left to live, 72 hours the most, unless we can find a doctor that has a cure. But Dalton didn't respond. Everyone turned to him and saw that Dalton was looking down with the expression of a man ashamed and shaking like a tree leaf in a storm. "Look out there." Dalton then pointed through one of the windows that showed some large mountains that were remarkably cylinder-shaped. "Those mountains are known as the Rockies. You'll need to go there as you want to end left off again, creating yet another thick atmosphere. The only doctor on this island lives at the castle on the top of that mountain, and is rumored to be a witch." Dalton said simply, and the Straw Hats could only look at each other with faces of uncertainty. "Her temperature is 106 degrees. Dalton shouted in disbelief. They were in his house that had a bed for Nami to rest in. And the crew saw an increase in Nami's fever, and that is not a good sign at all. That is not good. If it keeps up, her organs will overload and fail. "We know Mr. Dalton," Vivi said. She was hoping a cold wet cloth will help, but that was just wishful thinking. The captain had already determined Nami's condition. She only has about a day and a half left to live, 72 hours the most, unless we can find a doctor that has a cure. But Dalton didn't respond. Everyone turned to him and saw that Dalton was looking down with the expression of a man ashamed and shaking like a tree leaf in a storm. "Look out there." Dalton then pointed through one of the windows that showed some large mountains that were remarkably cylinder-shaped. "Those mountains are known as the Rockies. You will need to go there as you want a doctor," but Dalton left off again, creating yet another thick atmosphere. "The only doctor on this island lives at the castle on the top of that mountain, and is rumored to be a witch," Dalton said simply, and the Straw Hats could only look at each other with faces of uncertainty. "Comfortable back there, Nami?" Luffy asked with a concerned tone while Usopp and Jin were tying his girlfriend by the waist with a spare, sturdy piece of cloth. Nami still was too weak to speak, so she just nods at a painfully slow rate. "Good. Are you sure that you want to do this? I'm sorry that there is no other way to get to the doctor's castle. Maybe we can wait until the doctor is in one of the town and take our navigator there?" Dalton asked and tried to talk the Straw Hats out of this crazy plan. They were told that there was no way up the mountain where the castle was located, except to climb it. The freezing temperatures and snowfall were bad enough, but Dalton also told them about another danger. He called them lapons, creatures that were considered to be the byproduct of polar bears and snow rabbits. They are among the fiercest creatures on this island that the locals refuse to name, especially with those that walk into their territory. "Sorry Dalton, but we can't," Luffy said once he got a sturdy and comfortable grip on his girl. "If that castle is where the doctor lives, then that is the best place to wait for." Luffy explained his haste. "I may not be a doctor, but I do know about most poisons and cures. I will be able to find what Nami needs in that castle. And besides, I've got Jin and Sanji along." Luffy then turned to the pair by his side. "Whatever we will find at the base of the mountain, they won't be a problem. Right, Sanji?" Luffy smirked to see Sanji with eyes that were brighter than street lamps. "Of course," I will never allow a woman to suffer any longer. Sanji could have said anything else, but he did mature a little and toned down his perverted rants ever since Little Garden, when everyone, including the ladies, beat on the cook. And Luffy added his own spice to the soup when the captain dragged like a sack of potatoes, scolding Sanji, as well as other examples of verbal abuse. That was why Sanji hadn't been flirting with the local girls that were out in the open. He was officially afraid. Afraid of what people like Luffy will do when Sanji is at his own devices. Well then, Luffy replied at last, let's go and get Nami healed, hurry it up. And with that, Luffy disappeared out of town with Sanji and Jin by his sides and Nami on his back, handing on life by a delicate thread. That captain. What will he won't do that won't surprise us, Alvida said with memories of her first encounter with the man that would be her own captain, and all the adventures she had in the East blew up till now. And every other Straw Hat was doing the same. Just what kind of captain is that boy? Dalton then spoke up and wondered why each of the remaining Straw Hats got sullen all of a sudden. That boy, Dalton, Usopp spoke up with an edge in his tone, is the captain that is going to be the next king of pirates. And so far, he has no equal. What's worse, he had a power that will enable him to kill every single living being on this island if he wanted to. Usopp explained, and Dalton gotten sullen himself. His expression had gotten a little tense and darkened. That will be the worst threat to this island, even topping Wapol. Dalton then remarked, and the Straw Hats turned to look surprised. What's wrong? Wapol, as in the pirate captain named Wapol? Kaya spoke up. The one with a metal ship? Alvida asked. And has a devil fruit power that allows him to consume any material? Usopp finished, and Dalton just chuckled. I don't know about that bastard being a pirate. I'm sure that is just a front. He actually was our ex-king. The Straw Hats were shocked this time. Who would have thought that with Vivi being a princess instead of an assassin? There was a king that passed off as a pirate. This happened when another group of pirates arrived and attacked our island. There were only 5 pirates this time. The captain called himself Blackbeard. Only 5? No wonder you wanted us to leave once we arrived. Frank replied, and the other Straw Hats nodded. Dalton also did. And Blackbeard, that sounds scary if he and his crew were able to attack an entire island on their own. Carol added her own 2 cents, not caring if most didn't agree with her comment. But then again, everyone who lives here considers that attack to be a blessing. Dalton spoke up, and this didn't go well with some of the Straw Hats. How can a pirate attack be a blessing? It looked like they destroyed your homes, harmed a lot of people, and did your king in. Vivi shouted, and Dalton could only chuckle in response. I could agree. But their views on the attack was justifiable. As the king who once ruled here was nothing more than a tyrant. He was hated by all but his subjects. His rule brought fear and despair. Once he was gone, we were free to build a much better society on our island. Dalton explained, and that when Vivi had to open her big mouth. So the pirates were strong enough to defeat Wapol and his army, so they had to leave the island? She asked, innocent enough but didn't like the look on Dalton's face. No, not at all. Dalton spoke, dragging each word like it was a concrete brick attached to a string. When Blackbeard and his pirate crew attacked us, Wapol's army didn't try to fight. In fact, once he saw their overwhelming he took his men and fled like a coward. Like a rat leaving its family trapped on a sinking ship. Our king left us at the mercy of pirates, so he won't be harmed. What kind of king will be so disgraceful and disloyal? Vivi then burst open in rage, which was clear as fresh glass on her face. And after that, no one said another word. This island and its inhabitants were so unfortunate to be attacked and ransacked by pirates, and their only army fled instead of fighting. Dalton, one of the townspeople, hurried to where the Straw Hats were with the said man. Wapol has been sighted, heading towards the neighboring town of Cocoa Weed. Dalton then looked like he witnessed a cold-blooded murder right in front of his eyes. Thank you. Dalton then got up from the snow and armed himself with his large weapon. Sorry my friends, but I can't ignore this situation or delay a single second. I swore to never let Wapol set foot on this island, with my life. The Straw Hats said nothing as they simply watched Dalton borrowed a horse and hurried towards the direction of Cocoa Weed. XXXXX later. Well, guys, the wind had gotten slightly stronger and it seems to get colder all the same. Luffy spoke up. He and his group had just cleared of the town Bighorn, about to head into the forest at the base of the mountain they must climb. We can tell, Jin shouted, and maybe you will be better off actually wearing shoes. This time Sanji had to agree. Just seeing you run in the snow with those sandals is painful enough to watch. Sorry guys, it is my policy. I like to have feet. You will be surprised at what you can sense if you do. Luffy replied, and his 2 crewmates just sighed and gave up on asking any further. So, wanting to pass the time, I heard that people barely sleep at all if they live in snowy countries like this. Sanji and Jin were suddenly interested again. Why not? When a person falls asleep, the body starts to cool down to the point that a human can freeze to death in this weather. So most of them are afraid of dying that way if they do go to sleep. That's idiotic. Sanji spoke up before flinching when Luffy turned his eyes glance into his direction. I mean, Everyone needs to sleep sometime. If they don't, it will be like running a machine to ground even through it is overheating. If they don't stop and let it cool, it will explode. We can die if we don't have enough sleep. I am not sure since I grew up in the East Blue, and we sleep just fine. I only heard this from a customer from the pub I usually hang out in. Luffy then turned back to facing the base of the mountain. And while the trio were running through the snow, they were dodging, ignoring a little creature that had been trying to eat at them since they first entered the forest. And the snow keeps falling on their skin, so they are dyed whiter than pure marble. It makes women more beautiful and more like goddesses, so most of them come here. Sanji then brought up a story he heard himself. He said that in snowy countries, women have skin that is as smooth as skin and as white as the very snow that falls on this island. This was done when the women get cold and rub their skin most of the time until the skin surface is just like expertly cut marble. And cut that out. Sanji then finally lost his temper with the creature trying to bite his head off while telling his story. Luffy and Jin frowned to see Sanji kick that creature like a soccer ball. Seriously Sanji, you won't be much of a father if you treat kids like that, Jin remarked and Luffy before they both got a little ahead of Sanji, who just stood there in his sweet temper. It took a few seconds before the cook hurried to catch up.
But they didn't get very far when they were halted by a herd of large beasts that were like grown-up versions of the creature that was harassing and stalking the trio earlier. That was why Luffy and Jin found themselves scowling at Sanji once they saw the latter on the shoulder of the other. For this, you get most of the action. Make sure that not one follows us. And Jin, you make sure that not one of them attacks us. Any jolt will just make Nami's condition turn fatal.
Luffy finished his orders and turned to face the creatures just in time for the leader, judging by his scar, initiated an attack on Luffy. But Sanji was quick to act and sent him flying. Luffy then charged through the snow towards the rest of the herd and Jin protected them with his twin tonfas, sending each one of them away. These are the Lapons alright, but we can't afford to fight all day. Jin shouted with an edge. Seriously, with everyone that falls, another will appear from the other side of Luffy and sicken Nami. Why aren't you? Because like I said, Luffy was doing his own share of frustrations trying to dodge the attacks from the Lapons. Any jolt to Nami will be fatal. And any blast of my haki won't be good for her. All except for my Kenbunshoku haki, observational haki. And it won't defeat these beasts, only avoid them. Jin and Sanji heard that and growled to themselves. They both know that Luffy could just knock them out right at the start of the ambush. But they had no idea that Luffy's Haoshoku haki, Conqueror's haki, can also attack allies in a way that a person with a fever can be fatally affected, while otherwise nothing if they are in perfect health. Then they all noticed it. All the fallen and attacking Lapons suddenly halted in their tracks and were summoned far up the hill, much closer to the base of the mountain than the pirates are. And at first, they did nothing. Nothing but stare at the pirates, who also did nothing. They had no idea what to make up from this. All they knew was that they had to hurry up with Nami getting to the castle, and they can't afford to start another battle. After a while, the Lapons started to move. But instead of charging for them, they instead just umped. They jumped up and down on the snow for seemingly no good reason. The pirates didn't know what to make of it until Luffy then heard it. Even through the roaring winds of the blizzard, Luffy heard it. He heard the snow getting weaker around where the Lapons were jumping. That was when it happened, when all that snow started to fall apart and slide down the hilltop. It was an avalanche. Luffy, Captain, Sanji and Jin shouted with shocked. How are they going to survive something like that, and they were so close to the mountain? All Luffy did before the shadow of the falling snow covered them was gasp, with fear finding its way back into his soul after 10 years. XXXXX when Nami finally woke up since the fever had knocked her out, but not on Luffy's back or in his arms anymore. She was in a bed, with thick warm sheets. Nami also saw that a bag of ice was laying on her forehead, and being stabilized by the handle of an axe that was also tied to back of the bed. But then Nami heard a door opening and closing. She found that even turning her head was difficult with her heavy head still dizzy and feeling hot at the cheeks. But Nami was able to see that it was a woman coming in. And when Nami slowly got up from her pillow, that woman came next to her with a beer bottle in one hand and sent the other into Nami's way. 101 degrees. Slowly but surely, the antidote is working just fine, the woman said with a single finger on Nami's forehead. As for who I am the one that is looking after you, you silly and sick girl. The name is Dr. Kureha. She smiled. What to know how I am so young? Kureha dresses in a style more suited to women in their 20s, far from her real age. This includes a navel ring, a shirt that bears her midriff, a purple blazer and purple low-riding pants. She has a pair of small sunglasses that, when they're not over her eyes, she wears on her forehead even when she's using glasses. She wears bracelets and rings on her left hand. Kureha wore pants with a pink design on the left leg and a blazer with a yellow line along the shoulders and down each arm. She wore a white shirt with a pink cherry blossom on the front and green sleeves and borders. Ignoring that last, unrelated question, Nami just looked around. She was definitely in a castle room and had a change of clothes. And the bed was definitely comfy. Where am I? Nami was able to get out before coughing. This promoted Kureha to push Nami back onto the bed. I wouldn't move around much with the virus still doing some strong damage to your body. I only gave you the cure a couple of hours ago. Kureha lectured Nami. And as to where you are in my home. I am still amazed that you, that skinny boy, the zombie and the blonde are still alive. Nami widened her eyes. Jin and Sanji did look beat up and Luffy was about to freeze to death. Are they okay? Nami tried to get up but only got uncomfortable and coughed up again. They are alive, like I said. Kureha said. The blonde had a broken back and several splintered ribs. The zombie-looking guy had about 50 breaks in his arm and leg. Nami cringed from her pillow to hear such horrible injuries. And that boy with the straw hat was just seconds from dying of frostbite. And that was from climbing the entire mountain, 3 entire miles in height. While Kureha was ranting, Nami just took a heavy sigh before looking extremely happy. Luffy, you did say that you will go through hell and back for even one of us. And you never once a jolt to me while you were carrying me. You're my hero, Luffy. Then Kureha noticed Nami's expression and didn't say a word until Sanji. That outburst had pretty much rattled the entire castle and got both Nami's and Kureha's attention. Get him? Nami began to smile as she recognized that voice from anywhere. Sure enough, both doors to the room were all opened, with a pair of blurs entering and exiting. And then there was the young man that appeared on his legs, trying to catch his breath. Seriously? That is the 5th time we went down this corridor. Where does he get all that energy for? It was Luffy, and as soon as he saw Nami, still with the fever and reddening of her face, awake, he froze and lost his voice. Nami, Luffy, the couple said in that order until Luffy finally moved again. And he did in another blur to grasp Nami and kiss her square on the lips. Being used to the show of her boyfriend's power, Nami didn't even hesitate to kiss him back. I told you that I will get you to a doctor. Luffy said in a breathless tone, and Nami could only nod before getting comfortable in his chest. Kureha is going to get you healed in no time. It is rather rude to talk about someone while they are in the same room and while facing away from them. Luffy then turned to face the said doctor with a sheepish expression. Now then, you lovebirds will love to hear that the 5-day illness is not contiguous, only spread by the bug bite of the Kestia. We know. We had been in Little Garden. Luffy replied, and that gave the doctor an "ah" look on her face. Then you also should be glad to know that unlike those brat doctors I have known years ago, I always keep a cure of diseases that are supposed to be extinct. Only in the Grand Line can I even find the materials I need to make one, Kureha ranted, stopping to hear the couple laugh at the sight. I guess that you were right. What you said to Sanji. Nami whispered as her voice was killing her throat. About how you couldn't get your hands on the cure for me from the East Blue. Sanji is still a good cook and a reliable marital artist, but I swear that his insanity and perverted foolishness with women runs in his family. Luffy said, having a shiver for some reason. If only Luffy realized how true that was. Whatever brats. I administered the cure because your girl was just on the verge of dying. Even with you and your frostbite. Or even that blonde kid with the broken ribs chasing my pet, Kureha replied, and Luffy looked sheepish all over again. I know. I already gave up on getting to that idiot. Let him go to you. Please, doctor. Luffy then had the expression of a kid who is begging for his mother to let him into a candy store and pay for everything. And, coming through a doctor and closing it behind, was a little reindeer. But unlike any normal reindeer, this one stood on its hind legs, wore a strange hat that had an X on top, and the nose was blue-colored. I lost him. Nami was then shocked to hear it speak clearly like a human's and yet sounded a lot like a child's tone. Hello, Chopper. The reindeer then turned to Luffy with the look of a child who has seen his father for the first time. Big brother, you're back. You're really back. Nami had absolutely no idea what is going on, but the cute scene of a walking reindeer embracing Luffy, calling Big Brother, was enough to make her giggle. Luffy has yet another secret to share and explain. XXXXX. Meanwhile, hey, look at the sky, Usopp shouted, pointing upward. Everyone who happened to hear him also looked up and saw the sky still filled with thick clouds, but it wasn't what Usopp wanted to point out. So what? It is a Winder Island, and Alvida answered, not seeing the problem. She was getting a little tired of the snowfall falling down her slippery skin faster than rainfall. But then came the realization that slowly, one by one, came to everyone's head. It's not snowing, one of the locals shouted. That never happens here. This is a winter Grand Line Island. It always snows. Dalton tried to keep the crowd under control, but something about that group of scared and confused locals had caught the attention of the Straw Hats. There was one member of the crowd that wasn't panicking or yelling. He didn't even look concerned or confused. That's as suspicious as a clear sky with thunderstrikes. The man in a cloak noticed that the Straw Hats were staring at him and walked out of the crowd, unnoticed by the locals. Greeting all. He spoke in a rather polite tone that deterred the Straw Hats one bit. You are definitely not a local. Usopp spoke up. Just who are you? The name is Ace, and I heard that Luffy is sailing this sea. Where is he? The cloaked man said, and the Straw Hats just didn't know what to think of respond. Is this ace fellow a friend or a foe? What is he under that cloak? Hello, Chopper. The reindeer then turned to Luffy with the look of a child who has seen his father for the first time. Big brother, you're back. You're really back. Nami had absolutely no idea what is going on, but the cute scene of a walking reindeer embracing Luffy, calling big brother, was enough to make her giggle. Luffy has yet another secret to share and explain. XXXXX. Meanwhile, hey, look at the sky, Usopp shouted, pointing upward. Everyone who happened to hear him also looked up and saw the sky still filled with thick clouds, but it wasn't what Usopp wanted to point out. So what? It is a winder island, and Alvida answered, not seeing the problem. She was getting a little tired of the snowfall falling down her slippery skin faster than rainfall. But then came the realization that slowly, one by one, came to everyone's head. It's not snowing, one of the locals shouted, that never happens here. This is a winter Grand Line island, it always snows. Dalton tried to keep the crowd under control, but something about that group of scared and confused locals had caught the attention of the Straw Hats. There was one member of the crowd that wasn't panicking or yelling. He didn't even look concerned or confused. That's as suspicious as a clear sky with thunderstrikes. The man in a cloak noticed that the Straw Hats were staring at him and walked out of the crowd, unnoticed by the locals. Greeting all. He spoke in a rather polite tone that deterred the Straw Hats one bit. You are definitely not a local. Usopp spoke up. Just who are you? The name is Ace, and I heard that Luffy is sailing this sea. Where's he? The cloaked man said, and the Straw Hats just didn't know what to think of respond. Is this Ace fellow a friend or a foe? What is he under that cloak? What is it to you? Usopp asked with an edge. He had been that way since he first heard of an avalanche coming, only for it to vanish in an instant. Something was definitely at work, but it could have happened from any single point on the entire island. It was a foolish idea to even consider looking for the one that caused the avalanche of snow and rubble to halt before it could reach even the nearest village. Are you some bounty hunter after our captain's head? When he reached for his rifle and the other Straw Hats for their weapons, they saw the stranger laugh instead. Please. As if I could turn Luffy even if I was interested in his bounty. Ace, nervous, chuckled, adding to the Straw Hats' suspicions. I did see his bounty poster, and I have heard that Luffy is here in the Grand Line. I didn't want him to look for me, so here I am, looking out of my life. Devil fruit, Zoro said out of the blue. You have a devil fruit. It is the best thing to explain how you were able to halt the snowfall on this cupcake of an island with frost icing. So how is a devil fruit user afraid of our captain? None of us know you. Me neither. Ace replied. But I know Luffy, and yes, I do have a devil fruit. But that is not going to help me catch up to Luffy getting a head start on me, that damn younger brother of mine. He growled, and this got the Straw Hats both on edge and puzzled by that expression. Little brother. Ace cringed at the sheer volume of the pirates yelling at once. Hey, I hadn't been his big brother ever since we had that cup of sake 10 years ago. I actually been out for months. Ace shouted in defiance, like he was offended by their response or their expression. And whenever I tried to ask what happened, Luffy will just not say a word and pound me to the ground. After a dozen or two times, I just gave up. Luffy is the younger but stronger brother of the bunch. He even scares me sometimes when he goes off. The Straw Hats didn't know what to make of this. Luffy had a brother, and yet their captain is stronger than his older brother? Then Usopp remembered something that Luffy said. Flashback begins. What just happened, Luffy? Nami asked of her boyfriend, who didn't even look disgusted or shocked, but concerned. I am sure that he was just waiting, Nami. He was holding in all that pain until he saw me. Luffy then put his hat on his chest, the traditional act of saying prayers to the newly deceased. He was getting close to that age of his long life. You have been here, in the Grand Line before? Usopp finally walked up to his captain about that encrypted talk. Usopp. Luffy said sternly. When you get drunk, your mind is as gullible as a child and as forgettable as your great-grandfather. What better way to keep a secret? Flashback ends. Luffy, Usopp whispered, and then turned to the one of the Rockies. The tingling feeling on the back of his head told him to do so. Just what can your power do? XXXXX. Meanwhile, come one Chopper, she won't bite. Luffy teased Chopper, struggling to get him into letting Nami hold him. You're like a little boy trying to get out of a bath. No, big brother. Chopper wasn't acting out of fear for getting sick from Nami's ailment or getting her cooties. It was something else, and Nami saw it in his eyes. It was his cuteness that prevented her from frowning. Then Chopper stopped struggling when Luffy rubbed him under the chin. Ah, Nami couldn't help herself to see Chopper acting like a house cat to Luffy's magic touch. She then reached and rubbed the little reindeer the same, seeing that Chopper didn't notice the difference in finger complexion. But he sure did when he found himself in Nami's arms. Big brother. Chopper couldn't believe that Luffy tricked him into submitting by extorting his personal favorite spot to be rubbed. He didn't care that Nami felt rather soft even with the fever trickling at his fur. Why are you afraid, little guy? You are too cute to be eaten up. Nami decided to tease Chopper a little, but then noticed that the reindeer had actually gave up trying to get free from her grasp. Chopper looked like he had just gone down the alleyway off memory lane. Chopper. Nami was about to panic, thinking that she had just ruined Chopper's day when she felt Luffy hold his hand over hers. Don't blame yourself, Nami. Chopper hasn't found a good reason to even like his nose, Luffy said, and then rubbed it in a way that Chopper looked a little relaxed but still forlorn. Reindeer all have black noses, to have one of a different color is to be a disgrace in their eyes. Even his own mother. That's terrible. Why would she do such a thing? Nami shouted. She almost felt that way with Belmere since they were poor. But this was much bigger and worse than anything Nami could think of. No one knows, but that doesn't matter anymore. She could be somewhere else, never to mate again for all we care. Luffy said coldly. Even if she left the herd to find another mate, the entire mountain had seen what she did to Chopper. No one will ever want her ever again. That is her punishment. Nami could have sworn that Luffy spoke from experience. You were there too, she said, but no one answered. And through your powers, you confronted that reindeer and told every other herd on the island of what she done. Luffy then finally nodded. You are getting closer to the truth, one that I knew will be revealed once I entered the Grand Line again. I just never will forget when I saw Chopper being treated the worst by his own kind. Luffy spoke with a tone that was colder than the snowy air, but it wasn't at anyone in the room. It was probably at a soul that has long passed away. I felt like tearing her head off, but the worst I could do was punish her. She was doomed to never mate again, to possibly bear a child she was just reject. Luffy continued. And then he came. Chopper's friend, his companion and his real father, he was. Then, Luffy and Chopper stiffened, as if they suddenly turned to statues. Statues that faced one certain direction. Luffy's nerves were on the edge and Chopper's nose was on high alert. Whatever presence they sensed, it was revolting to say the least. It's Wapol. XXXXX back at the base of the drum Rocky. Are you telling both him and the other Straw Hats having a shadow covering their eyes that this was here all along? Usopp was referring to slope car that was attached to a large rope that was tied to a large tree and led all the way to the castle on top of the drum Rocky mountain. Luffy climbed the mountain for no good reason. I'm sorry. A poor sap who had to be the one to bring the late news was cringing at the expressions of the pirates. I thought that this was torn down when the pirates from before sent Wapol off. Whatever, Zoro happened to be present and pulled that messenger by the scarf. He was going to do some foolish and extreme swimming in the Drum Island water with only his pants on. But the avalanche had caused to drift towards the Bighorn village. Does it still work? The messenger villager nodded furiously. I wish that you won't threaten the messenger pirate hunter. How are we going to explain to the captain? Zoro groaned to hear yet another person that was supposed to be on the king's gourd. Kuro had actually tried to chase after Zoro, to keep the latter from that stupid attempt to swim in the freezing waters. That was how they both landed in the same village. Luffy will increase my training, I know. Zoro moaned out when everyone won't stop staring at him, expecting an answer. I should have been used to it, but that captain just finds new ways to get me pale and whimpering. I will also tell Luffy that too, Zoro. Usopp was proud of himself for actually talking down Zoro and even pat him on the head, like the swordsman was reduced to a mere boy. Whatever guys, we did get Dalton stabilized, but he still wants to get up to the castle. Alvida brought up and everyone turned to what is left of the massive man with a morality just as big and unwavering. Why yes, Dalton had to get arrows in his chest when Chess and Kuromarimo dated to attack the people of Bighorn, in an attempt to kill him. Wapol is there. Even when his wounds were stitched up, the sheer cold was finally eating away the big, good man. He will live, but he will have to feel the cold of the icy winds and that he failed to stop Wapol from reaching his prize. Take me, to the castle. The Straw Hats looked at each other until Usopp stepped up to Dalton. If we refused, then we will have to answer to our fierce but loyal captain. This is the most we can do for a man who loves his town and his people. There are too little in this world. Dalton nodded and led Kuro and Zoro to lift him off the ground once again and help him walk over to the trolley car with the rest of Bighorn following behind, slowly. XXXXX meanwhile, ma ha ha ha. Wapol laughed in all of his disgusting arrogance. At last, I have arrived at my castle. And it looks just the same as it was when I ruled it. Wapol was egged on this with Chess and Kuromarino bowing to him on both ends. It won't be long before I will become the king of this miserable island once again. Kuromarimo sports a long, orange cloak, with white lining and black afros at each end, and white afros hanging from the front. He wears gloves that cover all fingers but his thumb, and resemble an afro. He has a large black afro on his head, and 3 small ones on his beard. He is of medium height and normal weight. He wears a shirt that's orange in the middle and white on the sides with light yellow buttons, along with orange shorts. He has hairy legs, and black boots with white laces. Overall, Kuromarimo resembles a boxer. And Chess was that same, strange man who was under the illusion of standing on water, right before the Straw Hats had their first encounter with Wapol and his so-called pirate crew. They were actually his personal army and his ship was merely disguised as a pirate ship since sailing the seas as thieves was not on Wapol's agenda. It was so he can flee from the 5 pirates who ran ashore before the Straw Hats did, and hopefully return to Drum Island. Wait, sire. At the top of the castle. Chess then pointed, and when Wapol looked to see what was up, he growled in anger. There wasn't a state flag or a nation flag, but one with the Jolly Roger. It was a pirate's flag that had Sakura petals surrounding the skull and crossbones. What has happened to the flags of my kingdom? Who dares try to place a filthy pirate flag in its place? Wapol ranted until he heard a certain elderly woman chuckle. That garbage, I burned all of it ages ago when I moved in. That man was a fool, but he had a good heart, and I happened to like his personal flag. Kureha had exited out of the front door like a lady who has trespassers on her lawn. I don't know how you found this island, but you are not welcome here, especially here. This is the resting place of a great doctor that you laughed at. He was an idiot, a quack doctor who couldn't cure anyone. He was also a con man and a thief. I refuse to have my beautiful castle be a graveyard for the weak and stupid. Wapol retorted almost immediately. And as your king, I order you to leave my castle. As I refused to allow you to eat my ship, Wapol then heard the voice of someone else that he wished he didn't. I won't let you take back this castle. Go and steal a little girl's miniature castle and be its king for all I care. You, a pirate in my kingdom, you don't belong here? Wapol shouted to see Luffy come out right behind Kureha. And beside him were Jin and Sanji. The former had actually healed enough to be walking again and was caught up to speed. Meanwhile, Sanji ran himself lost in the castle until Luffy found him. But there was the problem of Chopper hiding behind Luffy's legs. Sanji, for the last time, don't cook this reindeer. Luffy, of course, ignored Wapol and scolded his cook for not controlling himself with Chopper. Jin and Kureha could only do as much as try to not pay attention to the little soap opera. Fine, fine. I have had it trying to catch that morsel, Sanji grumbled. And why are the ones who tried to eat our ship here? He shouted, still filled with irritation from his bad day. The same jerks that called themselves pirates, Sanji. Luffy said. Why not you and Jin get some exercise with the two on both sides of the tin head? As soon as Luffy said those words, Sanji ran off like a rocket while Jin sighed for only a couple of seconds then followed after. Sanji went after Kuromarimo, who was actually kept skilled, to dodge Sanji's swift and strong strikes. But Luffy could see that Sanji was suffering. He didn't get out of that avalanche a couple of days ago unscathed. Bikuri Marimo, surprise ball seaweed, cruelly, Kuromarimo saw it too and allowed Sanji to aim his kicks for the afro-shaped boxing gloves, just in time for spikes to appear and pierce Sanji's good leg. To add insult to injury, literally, Kuromarimo used the other glove with spikes all the same to strike Sanji in the belly, causing the cook to cough up more blood and get sent back to where Kureha was standing. Why you? Sanji growled and tried to get up, ignoring the pain throughout his body. Kureha sighed and shook her head. This blonde just doesn't know when to call it quits while he still has a body that works. Dokuda Sutapu, Doctor stop, Kureha. Stop, Sanji by using her weight on his back and twisted it to an angle that forced Sanji's lower half to not work for a while. Now Sanji can't run off and get himself killed. Meanwhile, Jin was having more luck against Chess. His tonfas with large iron spheres attached to their ends worked just fine against Chess's arrows. Pretty soon, the jester-looking man will run out of ammo and Jin will be able to get in close enough to finish off Chess. He just wished he had bought a personal firearm from Logetown and soon enough, he really wished it so. Don't think that I am done since that idiot blonde is out? Take this, Kuromarimo shouted and shot out many min afros at Jin and they quickly stuck to his arms and legs. Seeing that Jin had backed off and tried to get the fuzzes off, Kuromarimo laughed. Forget it, my Aleki Marimo, electric ball seaweed, are sticking to tea and there is something else you should know. Jin growled but smelled something burning. So when he turned towards Chess, he saw the jester's arrows were aflame. My Aleki Marimo are also flammable. Jin widened his eyes and couldn't do anything to stop Chess from firing them. Checkyameto, checkmate, Chess cried out, shooting those flame arrows at Jin, causing the Aleki Marimo explode all around Jin. And the man-demon wished that he wasn't already injured, then he wouldn't have fallen so easily and disgracefully. And now there is only one left. Chess turned with Kuromarimo towards Luffy but then. Hold it you guys. Both fighters turned to Wapol who actually halted them. I have been keeping my eye on that pirate. He didn't even as much as twitch to see his own stupid lackeys fall. And he gives off this thing telling me that he is much strong than any of us. Chess and Kuromarimo gasped to hear such a thing. So what do we do, sire? Kuromarimo inquired as well as Chess but Wapol asked something rather unusual. First, Chess. Wapol turned to the jester man with a notepad and rider feather in hand. What did I eat today in total? Chess looked in closely and answered. Sire, you ate 1 butter sautéed cannon, 1 cannon extra rare, a cannonball and gunpowder salad, and 1 grilled house. Those sounded disgusting but Wapol looked like he remembered a very delicious banquet. Thank you, and now, Wapol then began to change and morph. Waporu Hausu, Wapol House. Everyone was wondering if this poor excuse for a king was being serious or a clown when he turned into something of a living house that had cannons for arms and hands. To start off, that flag is going to go. Wapol actually fired from the cannons that were his arms and aimed at the flag flying at the top of the castle. This almost sent Chopper over the edge while the others were shocked to see that Wapol will waste his power on a flag. But the cannonballs never even reached the roof of the tower that had the flag. If you want to destroy Chopper's prized position, then you will have to go through me. Luffy then had the same aura from before, only visible to everyone. Kureha scowled. Chopper was worried as well as Sanji and Jin, both somehow still conscious. And the Wapol pirates were scared out of their wits. It was like they were turned into twigs and were trying to stare down a mountain about to collapse. I told you guys that he was dangerous, now brace, Wapol shouted to his two close warriors before chomping on them. This shocked everyone. Wapol practically committed cannibalism right in pure daylight. But when Wapol swallowed them, he acted like some kind of machine or a factory. Baku Baku Factory, called it. With my strength as Kuromarimo, a voice came from within the house-shaped Wapol but didn't quite sound like Kuromarimo. And my skill is chess, that same voice appeared and it did resemble chess a little. The suspense was nerve-killing to see what will come out of Wapol's house door that was on in the middle of his stomach. And with King Wapol's power and authority, now it sounds like the two characters were speaking in unison. Almost like a bad duo joke. We are, Chessmarimo. No one was impressed. Chessmarimo appears to be a large man and a combination of Chess and Kuromarimo. He has 4 thin arms, short legs and a wide-set body. He wears similar clothing to his original parts, sharing the color patterns of Chess and Kuromarimo's clothes. Not a very good act, Luffy said, matching what everyone was thinking. We are not acting, we are one being, more powerful than Chess and Kuromarimo apart, the creature shouted, we. Going against a reindeer. Luffy cut them off and that got everyone staring at him, especially Chopper. Little brother, I know that you hadn't spent the few years since I last saw you just sitting in your room reading medical books. You have been training and I want to see all of it in action. Treat this loser as a punching bag. Chopper sighed and then walked away from Luffy's legs, right up to face Chessmarimo. It is your funeral, freak. Instead of flinching, Chopper just reached in God knows where and took out a strange yellow ball. And what is that, your favorite snack? Candy? You're just a little kid who is about to be killed. Chopper said nothing still and actually consumed the ball like it was a snack. Rumble ball. Chopper shouted and then changed into something else. Heavy point. This was Chopper's human form, which gives him a human-like appearance and height. In this form, nearly all of Chopper's reindeer physical characteristics are gone. Only Chopper's blue nose and parts of his fur remain. This form also imbues Chopper with peak human, primate, strength and agility which comes in handy in battle or otherwise. On rare occasions this form has also been used to dodge in the air by turning into this form to fall at a faster rate. Chopper remembered on how usually uses this form to try to blend in with other humans, but instead he was often mistaken for the abominable snowman. Heavy gong. Chopper charged with his massive arm towards Wapol but was met by Chessmarimo. Don't think that we will allow a monster like you to lay your hands on King Wapol, it said and then pulled out a pair of bows, each with burning arrows. Yukidoke no ya Marimo, snow-thawing arrow Marimo. Walk point. But Chopper was able to dodge them by transforming from a large man and into an actual reindeer. After dodging every arrow that Chessmarimo can throw at him, Chopper transformed back into his heavy point to land a hit on the fused warrior creature. But once again he was interrupted from his target by another intruder. It was Wapol getting in the way this time, to try and swallow Chopper. Jump point. Chopper shouted and almost vanished in a blur. Everyone just looked up to see that Chopper was about as tall as his heavy point but much more lean. Jumping, Chopper looked like he was flying. Luffy remarked and his two crewmates nodded somehow. Then they all focused back on the battle. Apparently, Chopper's jump point was only efficient in dodging attack so Chopper had to switch to something else. Dabakuri Marimo, Quattro Hammer, Super Surprise Marimo, 4 hammers. Chessmarimo had its own change in tactics and tried to land a hit on Chopper by an ambush of hammers. But while they did hit Chopper, instead of bones being broken, the reindeer more like bounced around like a ball. Just what is wrong with that body of yours? The rumble ball. Chopper said, wrenching himself from the crater he made in the side of the castle. He looked like his fur had grown a pound a second so that he was a giant fuzzball, with fur that is highly packed that attacks rarely reach the main, solid body to cause damage. Through science and medicine that I learned from the doctrine, I have found a spade power. One that can affect only certain devil fruit powers, such as mine. I usually did have only 3 form but with only a single rumble ball, I can use a total of 7. But 7 is not necessary to defeat you. Arrogant freak. Just because you turned yourself into an even greater monster, doesn't mean that you can defeat the power of this country. Chessmarimo shouted but Chopper was as stoic as a Buddha. Then he shifted to his miniature form. Now what are you going to do? Scope, Chopper shouted, placing his reindeer hooves into the shape of a firearm crosshair. To his eyes, he was scanning his opponent in an effort to find where the weak spot is. And he found it. Arm point. Kokute Roseo, carving hoof cherry blossom. Chopper then grew taller and larger, especially in his arms. Those muscles were greater than a professional weightlifter and looked like they were to burst open if they get any larger. No doubt, this is easily one of Chopper's strongest forms in his arsenal. With that in mind, it was no surprise to see that the muscular Chopper had gotten through Chessmarimo's axes and punch so hard that the imprint was deep and large, Shapea rose petal. It was really surprising to see that while Chessmarimo did receive a lot of damage and coughed out blood, it still didn't fall. The most that happened was that the attack only pushed Wapol and his steed behind them. No one noticed the cries of the white walkie, falling hard down the mountainside. The roar of the blizzard made sure of it. But like most battles, they can feel old when they go on too long. Luffy knew that, and also something else. Chopper, don't hold back anymore. I know that you can better, Luffy shouted out to the reindeer. Then Chopper halted, just standing there like a sitting duck. Ha, Chessmarimo barfed through its pain. You have finally realized that you stand not a chance against us, prepare to die, monster. Dabakiri Marimo, Quattro Axe, Super Surprise Marimo, 4 axes. Chessmarimo pulled out 4 twin-sided axes and charged for Chopper, weapons aimed for the kill. But what happened next will not be forgotten by any of the witnesses. Not when 2 of the axes were blocked, not doing any damage. You call me a monster because I am not human. A voice soon was heard, and it was somewhat like Chopper's, only more mature and deeper like a man's. But compared to the other monsters of the Grand Line, I am actually normal. It is you who will be feared and hated, like the beasts you allowed yourselves to become. Everyone present were ranged from fully shocked to mild interest to see Chopper morph once again. But this form is nothing like the others. It was more like a combination, a Knight Prefect being with all the power from Chopper's other forms. Meet another one of my strongest forms, the Master Point. Chopper, don't hold back anymore. I know that you can better, Luffy shouted out to the reindeer. Then Chopper halted, just standing there like a sitting duck. Ha, Chessmarimo barfed through its pain. You have finally realized that you stand not a chance against us, prepare to die, monster. Dabakiri Marimo, Quattro Axe, Super Surprise Marimo, 4 axes. Chessmarimo pulled out 4 twin-sided axes and charged for Chopper, weapons aimed for the kill. But what happened next will not be forgotten by any of the witnesses. Not when 2 of the axes were blocked, not doing any damage. You call me a monster because I am not human. A voice soon was heard, and it was somewhat like Chopper's, only more mature and deeper like a man's. But compared to the other monsters of the Grand Line, I am actually normal. It is you who will be feared and hated, like the beasts you allowed yourselves to become. Everyone present were ranged from fully shocked to mild interest to see Chopper morph once again. But this form is nothing like the others. It was more like a combination, a Knight Prefect being with all the power from Chopper's other forms. Meet another one of my strongest forms, the Master Point. Chopper was now as tall as his jump point. His legs and arms were shaggy with thick fur from the guard point, and they were ripping with muscles from the arm point. His limbs had a bare spot at each knee and elbow. But the most distinguishing feature of this new form were his horns. They were much larger and thicker, and in the strangest shape ever. They rose from up top his head and then drooped down past his back, reaching his waist. They almost looked like the blades of a sleigh or a sled. Wapol and Chessmarimo only looked at Chopper's newest form for a second before starting to laugh. Master form. Now you look more of a freak than ever. That is what happens when pathetic animals try their best to even be as grand as human beings are. Then why don't any of you even look like humans? You too are as freaks as I am. Chopper retorted in a tone that was like of a teacher, a mentor and an experienced combat master. Mature, deep and stoic. And don't even try to break my spirit, it is already broken. Then why are fighting us? Why are siding with humans? We hate you, so you should hate us, go ahead. It will just get you killed. Chessmarimo shouted in pure pride and internally was outraged when Chopper's expression didn't budge an inch. It will get you killed too. You are hated here, tyrants. Don't think that you can last any longer in the Grand Line with just each other. What happens when one of you falls, leaving the other to fend for themselves? Chopper simply said. I know all this because Luffy and the Doctrine saved my life. They saved many lives and they taught me how to do the same. They even taught me how to make friends. Perhaps you could use some lessons yourself. Friends are just luggage that the strong have to carry. Why should we fight for an ungrateful kingdom? We run to survive so we can return and rule them, but they try to kill us. Chessmarimo looked like it snapped, turned mad. Of course they want to kill you. You call yourself rightful rulers until 5 pirates came. 5 pirates forced you and all your power to flee instead of fight. You chose to act like rats on a sinking ship. Chopper argued back. And do you see this island in more ruin than when you left it to its fate? The people were doing just fine without a ruler. They recovered without a leader. And they fought even without a general. You are neither. You are nothing to this island and its people. You are monsters, hated and unwanted. You're just like me. No, shut up. Chessmarimo started to rant and rant as its subconscious fought with its pride and irrationality over the topic. Take comfort that once you die, everyone on this island will die next. Chessmarimo charged its 4 axes flailing around, as if rubber trees in a strong wind. Chopper then raised one of his transformed, enhanced arm in a manner of readying a sword. When every single one of Chessmarimo's axes were inches above him, that arm suddenly turned charcoal black with a shine. And, just as swift, Chopper slashed at the axes and fused warrior itself. All 4 of the weapons were destroyed and Chessmarimo was sent back with a gash on its torso. Kill everyone? What about the Tin Tyrant right behind you? Are you going to kill him too? Chopper smirked to see that the tables have turned. He was taunting his enemy this time and Chessmarimo was actually intimidated for once. And he should be, since that fused creature is finally paying the prince for its empty threats and severe underestimating of the enemies it made today. Too bad. And I was actually impressed to see you take in my arm point. Kokute Roseo, carving hoof cherry blossom, boulders and forests were never enough to do the same. Chessmarimo was struggling to even keep standing with the gash stinging with the snowflakes touching the fresh wound and the cold wind licked past. Only his anger that a puny reindeer freak was pushing him around so easily. But if you like that move, then you will love this one. Master point. Chopper suddenly blurred from simply walking over to the wounded Chessmarimo. A punch to the fist was soon to be felt, followed by a kick to the opposite side and then a jab to the chin. Kokute Haruichiban, carving hoof spring storm. Chopper moved around with the speed, dexterity and reflexes of a professional boxer, and each of his punches were as strong as cannons and his kicks were like those of a martial artist. Once he was done, Chessmarimo was a mess. Covered in bruises and cuts, from Chopper's horns without a doubt. The only thing messier than Chessmarimo was the snowbank he was still standing on. But when Chopper finished his combo, he halted and just stood still in front of his messed up opponent. He said nothing, his friends behind him didn't say a word. But Wapol didn't even have an ounce of that patience shown. Chessmarimo. What the hell are doing? Waiting for more, kill them or I will. But his fused warrior was still irresponsive as ever. Move and kill them. Wapol just tapped on Chessmarimo and caused it to land hard ahead on the snow. Chessmarimo. Good work, Chopper. Did it like a real man and a real pirate. Wapol got out of his shock to see that Chopper was still in his master form, but Luffy was by his side. Now it is time that we finished this idiotic king. After all, what's stopping him from running again and eating his own men to transform into even more of a freak? XXXXX. Meanwhile, will you hurry it up? Usopp shouted to a villager who was about to poop out, trying to drive a railcar filled to the brim with passengers up the highest of the Drum Rockies. They should have placed more than one engine for these things. Then you take over, anything better than complaining. Kuro grumbled until his sharp mind perked when he saw Usopp's excited smirk. Wait. Never mind. Kuro may have been out of action for a while, but both he and the other Straw Hats knew that Usopp was a real prodigy and a natural in terms of speed and endurance during Luffy's rigorous training exercises. If Usopp was pedaling, the railcar will turn into a race car for sure. Whatever. One strained voice ended that scene in an instant, and everyone turned to the only person on board that can have such a broken tongue. Thanks for all this, everyone. Dalton whispered out. Sure, that his wounds were properly sealed up and he was brought back from the edge of freezing to death. Dalton wasn't in prime shape. Not even close. Who knows how much he can take before collapsing again. Dalton's recovery in a hurry was possible by a positive development. He was treated by Wapol's former league of doctors that he tried to abandon in the wake of the avalanche before it, mysteriously, disappeared. The ISSHI-20. The ISSHI-20 were the 20 most skilled doctors on Drum Island, whom Wapol took for himself in order to make his subjects dependent on him for their services. They were met with hose soldiers from Wapol's ship, but the ISSHI-20 confessed that they only went along to help others behind Wapol's back. Now that the spoiled so-called king had discarded them, the ISSHI-20 is now free to use their skills without fear anymore. Listen. Dalton got everyone off memory lane for the time being. Once we get to the castle, do as you wish but leave Wapol to me. I failed to stop him in Bighorn, but he has nowhere to run from the ruins of his castle. This time, I will not lose him. I will finish him and all this once and for all. And just how are going to do that? Zoro grumbled. He sure wasn't the most patient passenger. But he soon regretted saying that when Dalton just pulled out a long roll of dynamite from under his coat. Wait, you don't mean? I have learned this years ago and only realized back below, my friends. It is either that we both live or die. If Wapol is not going to get his stupidity cured, then there is no reason for him or me to live. Dalton said all that with a straight face, with words of a madman. The Straw Hats had no idea if they should try to talk him out of it or just let an honorable man take his fate like he is preparing for. Dalton is no coward and is willing to face his eventual death in order to spare his home of its greatest tyrant and traitor. At least everyone will no longer be abandoned to ruin and destruction. XXXXX. Back in the castle. What the hell? Wapol was in disbelief once again. While he was able to use the snowfall and snowbanks to hide from his enemies and later get past into the castle, he wasn't happy with its current state. What happened to my beloved castle? Why is there snow and ice everywhere? Who is letting in the wind? But Wapol soon forgotten about complaining when he saw one of the few doors that wasn't frozen over open slightly. And out of it was a certain orange-haired girl that was supposed to be in bed. Maybe it was that she didn't have a fever anymore and felt like moving around. I can't stand just sleeping around any longer. And with all the racket out there, I need to see what is going on. Nami though to herself, not seeing Wapol a floor down from her, until… Hey, who are you? And what are you doing in my castle? Nami heard that plenty and almost though to be Kureha. When she saw a short fat man with metal all over him, Nami tried to fool him. Nothing. I am just someone who was just checking out this castle and stay warm. I will now leave you in your castle, so good day. The girl tried her best to look convincing and with a straight face while she was at it. Nami had hoped this will do the trick until she saw Wapol climb up to her level when she made only a couple of steps up the stairs. Liar! Wapol shouted and chased after Nami, who cried that she hadn't gotten away with her intrusion like always. But the chase was short-lived and fortunate for Nami since she used a stair right in the floor downwards. And when Wapol tried it, his grift had prevented him from even fitting. Maybe I had been missing exercise for a little bit. That sure was an understatement and rather ignorant. I guess that I have no choice to eat myself. Nami was horrified to see Wapol actually engulfed his whole body in his oversized metal jaw and turned into a hopping metal can that still chased after Nami. Just what the hell are you, freak? Nami screamed. She didn't know what was scarier, a man eating himself or a tall tin can to be hopping after her. But then the can turned itself inside out. Behold my true self, without any excessive weight or bone. That voice was Wapol's for sure, but he sure looked different. Suramuapu Waporu, slim up Wapol. He was slim alright. He was even taller than Nami. His grit was gone and his entire body was not fat the least. And now, come here. No, Nami was sure scared and tried to get back to fleeing, but Wapol actually caught up, many times faster than before. But before Wapol could do anything to her, he was sent away with a mean kick of a sandal. Hands off Nami. The navigator was relieved and happy to see her captain, her boyfriend, her hero saving her again. I knew that you will want to get into the castle when you gave us the slip. But whatever, why are you out of bed? The cold air will make your fever return. I'm fine and I didn't want to be left out of the action, Nami said softly. Just who is he? Luffy sneered when Nami had to bring Wapol up. A nobody, a slippery one that is good at running away. Luffy answered and Nami hugged him in order to calm him down. But when his frown began to flatline, the good mood was ruined when… Enough of the soap opera. Wapol had recovered from that sucker punch, or kick, and pointed at a door that was at the base of the support pillar that held the staircase. See that? That is the storeroom for every weapon in my kingdom's arsenal. Once I get in and eat every single one, I will become so strong that you won't beat me commoners. But Luffy knew that those were empty threats, and was right when Wapol realized that he couldn't open the door. It was locked and he no longer had the key to it. Want me to open it by caving in the door with your head? Luffy did his own threatening and Wapol fled up the stairs. That was when Jin and Chopper finally appeared. Nami recognized the former but not the latter, who was still in his master form. Chopper, he is running to his ultimate weapon, which is instead a dead end. So, you are with me. Chopper nodded with Luffy turning to his crew. Nami, this is an order, go back to bed. Jin, lock the doors and make sure she stays at least in that room. Right, Captain. Jin was eager to follow Luffy's orders but had to wait for Nami's response. Then she gave it in a voice that only Luffy heard. Yes, dear. Nami then walked back over to the patient room with Jin behind her, but she teased her boyfriend a bit by sticking around her chest and jingled something for him to see, with a grin on her face. What a naughty girl, I will have to punish her later, Luffy smirked. Let's go, Chopper. They both disappeared up the stairs in a blur. XXXXX later, huh? Usopp shouted when he came out of the opening from the railcar, head first and with his rifle out. He scouted around, seeing nothing but snow in the castle. Weird. He stated to himself. Okay, I'll clear out here. Then give us a hand. He is heavy, Usopp sighed. Zoro just wasn't the type to give at least a thank you. Usopp said nothing and helped both Zoro and Kuro move Dalton up to the base level of the castle. Now where is this tin jerk? On another island, the Straw Hats tensed and drew their weapon when the snow in front of them burst apart. Thankfully, it was just Luffy. Where did you fall from, Luffy? Did we miss all the action? Usopp asked and Luffy smirked. We made sure that Wapol won't be able to find his way back to this island again. You can take care of him. Luffy pointed to the beaten chest Marimo, which hadn't budged an inch in all the while. And don't ask, really guys. Thankfully no one did, no matter how tempting it was. Is he really gone? Dalton asked, desperately. He was feeling like his conscience was slipping when his body was relaxing. He could have sworn to hear that Wapol was off the island again. If you are going to hate me for stealing your thunder, then go ahead. Luffy answered, but Dalton just sighed in relief before finally falling to the ground, with a smile this time. And sorry if you wanted more action. Thanks for bringing Dalton up here. We need someone like him to decide the next king. And everyone else up here? Kuro asked, and Luffy shrugged. Let's go and find out. Luffy led the way for the Straw Hats into the castle while the rest of the villagers dealt with both Dalton and the fused freaky warrior. Once inside, Kureha marched around like a mother with two misbehaving children hiding from their bath time. Nami is out of her bed? Oh kid. Kureha had turned over with a scowl that intimidated the Straw Hats a little before noticing that her expression their captain. No, your girlfriend is where she belongs, but she has the nerve to try and bargain her way out of her minimum rest time. Kureha grumbled and Luffy nodded. It is her style, but the important thing is that she is in bed. But what about Jin and Sanji? Are they in treatment? Luffy said, and Kureha looked furious as before, thankfully not at the Straw Hats. I wish. Those boys are pussies compared to how you were. I just can't find them anywhere in the castle. And another thing. Kureha stopped her rant when she felt Luffy press on her shoulder. I will find Sanji, just tell me that he goes to the machine room. He deserves that much. Luffy remarked, and when Kureha smirked like a sadist, he did the same and blurred down one of the halls. I should feel like I trained him too good, but I am too proud to be that soft. Kureha muttered to herself and then turned to the Straw Hats. They were terrified as to what to do with the witch, without their captain to calm her down. If you have time to stare, then help me find that zombie boy so I can fucking treat him. Move it. Yes, madam. XXXXX. That same evening, the castle was busy, and filled with moans and groans of pain. That will be Sanji and Jin in the machine room, that was filled with torture machines that Kureha had improved to be used for patients that try to run out on their treatment, to make sure they can't run away anymore. And while everyone was working on restocking their supplies for ailing, Nami was in a more pleasant and less painful treatment, sleeping in her bed. But she wasn't alone, she had Chopper keep her company. Luffy came to this island years ago. That is how you two know each other? I thought that Luffy had spent all his life in the East Blue. He said, before he had to go, that Big Brother had to keep it a secret. Something about big trouble if it was found out too soon. Chopper replied, relaxing on his chair. And that is all I know until I sensed Big Brother on his ship with a soul in pain. I knew that he was coming, but it was sure great to see Big Brother again. So how exactly did it happen? Nami asked him before Chopper could point out. I am sorry for bringing up bad memories, but I wish to understand my captain and boyfriend a little more. Don't worry, I won't tell anyone else. Chopper was still silent, and when Nami was about to change her mind, okay. Just this once. Nami listened in. Flashback begins. It was around 9 years ago. Why? A little reindeer cried and was screaming internally to see itself standing on 2 feet, with a child-shaped head and its hind hoofs more like hands. I thought that fruit was strange. Now I look more like a freak. It was in a clearing and with a herd of reindeer nearby, that had looks of disgust and horror on their faces. There was a female reindeer slightly closer but backed off with a harsh look as well. Mother. No, stay back, monster. You are no child of mine. That mother reindeer barked back with hostility. But the small creature still tried to approach its mother. Keep away from me, freak. You killed my son and now you are a monster. You are not my son. No, mother, don't leave me, please. The creature still cried out but was then launched back cruelly by the antlers of one of the male reindeer of the herd. OWW. We have tolerated your presence for far too long. We even allowed you to even follow us and eat with us. But all this so you can become a monster and kill us. This one was definitely the alpha male as the rest of the herd ganged up on the creature. Kill it. The creature screamed and braced for more pain when instead, it felt the arms of a being without fur. Or at least not natural fur. Looking up, the creature saw what it didn't recognize. He stood up too but didn't have any fur or hooves. The only fur was on his head, and it was black like the ravens that stare at the creature on some nights. Its fur was of other strange colors with something on its 2 feet. But the creature can see that this being was glaring at the herd while protecting him for some reason. I hear the sounds of a young animal in trouble, and I guess that I was right. And with enough time to stop you from killing one of your own. The being shouted at the herd in a strange language, but somehow, the creature and the reindeer herd understand him anyways. Human, the ones that search and kill us for our fur as clothing and our antlers as trophies. The alpha barked and the creature now understood what this being was. But why did this, human, save him despite what the alpha said? If you were here for us then scram. You can't take us all out at once? I didn't come to kill any of you. But I am especially angry at you, the alpha and her. The human then shouted and shocked the herd and the creature in his arms. It was like the human understood them. So asleep to the rest of you. The human then shouted and stared hard at the majority of the herd, that soon fell to the snow. They were knocked out and the human didn't even touch them. You humans are devils like I thought so. The alpha was angry that his herd was done in so easily and charged for the human. The creature screamed and tried to hide in the human's clothing, but still let one eye open to see what was going to happen. But instead of being attacked, the creature saw the alpha sent to the ground by the human with only a stroke of his free arm. I haven't got much in terms of grudges against you, Alpha. So, I can't waste much time on you. The human sneered at the alpha that could only lay down in pain with blood on his face. The creature was no stranger to the red liquid that come out of its cuts and sometimes, its busies. Speaking of whom, the creature was wondering where the human was walking to, taking him along. It is you that I want. The creature realized that this human not only saved him, knocked out the herd, defeated the alpha so easily but also was going to stick up for it in the face of the mother reindeer that tried to run away from it. I don't know how you can understand us human but you demons always side with each other. Just leave me be and take that monster with you. I didn't ask you what you think of Chopper. The creature and the mother reindeer wondered where that name came from but didn't have the chance to think on it. But I am not leaving without giving you your punishment. Now you are acting like my judge. You humans just love having all that power and arrogance to yourself. You don't know anything about me, the mother reindeer shouted off, scaring the little creature. Not that she noticed or cared. I know enough that you committed the worst sin a mother could do. You gave birth to your son but regret him for what? A blue nose? The creature realized that in the short moments it had after eating that strange fruit, it forgot that it was its blue nose that caused a lifetime of neglect and loneliness. So what? He is still your child and you wanted to kill him? I don't need to know more to punish you and if I don't then no one else will. The creature gasped at that proclamation. The one that warmed its heart somehow. And what are you going to do? Kill me? Strip my fur off for your rug, on your floor? You all? Do your worst. The mother reindeer was now mad with anger. And the creature was wondering why the human looked like he was going to enjoy the punishment, given the size of his smirk. Sure. Watch closely. The human then placed half of the small things on his hand, on the place above his eyes. Then came a voice that the creature or the mother reindeer will never forget. Everyone that dwells and lives on the island and makes their home within its woods and snow. Listen to what I have to share with you. A mother has tried to get a reindeer herd to kill her own reindeer son. I ask that you will understand how unforgivable the sin is and never accept her into your herds or homes. She will never be a mother again and will never find another mate for the rest of her life. Promise me this on behalf of this young one that had to suffer so. So be it, the one that wins. That was clear and loud like the blizzard's roars. The deed has been done and the creature will be spared. And its former mother will be alone until the day she falls dead. The animal herself, the one that her home won't accept anymore, just sat there in the snow. All she ever saw was the human and her former son walk off down the base of the mountains. She will never see them again. Her wish granted with a twist. Meanwhile, the creature will be given the name Chopper for how his antlers look like they can chop wood. And as for the human, he will be later called Monkey D, Straw Hat, Liberglade, Luffy. Before they will depart, Luffy and Chopper will become sworn brothers with dreams and the determination to go for them. Chopper wants to be the best he could be, maybe even be a doctor. Flashback ends. Once Chopper was done, Nami opened her arms. She didn't care if Chopper refused or not. He needed a hug. And he did see what Nami had in mind. Because he ran into her embrace, trying to avoid her bust and cried once he felt her smooth arms on her fur. It was a sad scene but it somehow made Nami feel like a mother or at least a big sister. With a little brother that is down on his luck and needs support. Something to cry on where hopefully no one will see. Chopper never stopped crying but when he heard Nami gasp, smell a certain lingering alcohol scent and felt rough but strong arms around his body, he really let the waterfalls out. Even with all the tears clouding his sight, Chopper saw the familiar hat and raven hair. There was no mistake to it. Chopper not only had his big brother holding him but a big sister as well. It was the second best present that was given to the little reindeer who had to suffer much. Once Chopper was done, Nami opened her arms. She didn't care if Chopper refused or not, he needed a hug. And he did see what Nami had in mind. Because he ran into her embrace, trying to avoid her bust and cried once he felt her smooth arms on her fur. It was a sad scene but it somehow made Nami feel like a mother or at least a big sister. With a little brother that is down on his luck and needs support. Something to cry on where hopefully no one will see. Chopper never stopped crying but when he heard Nami gasp, smelled a certain lingering alcohol scent and felt rough but strong arms around his body, he really let the waterfalls out. Even with all the tears clouding his sight, Chopper saw the familiar hat and raven hair. There was no mistake to it. Chopper not only had his big brother holding him but a big sister as well. It was the second best present that was given to the little reindeer who had to suffer much. It has been a few days since Wapol dared to return to the island of eternal snow. I still think that it was reckless of you walking through a forest during a blizzard and what were you thinking of climbing this goddamn mountain? The Straw Hats moaned and groaned. It was like they heard it for the 1000th time. It was Ace, trying his best to get this rant into Luffy's head. Ace, you are overreacting. I had Nami on back, sick and only several hours before dying. There wasn't the time to wait for the doctor coming, so the best option was going to the doctor. I also had 2 of my crewmates with me so there was no real danger. Luffy grumbled out. Too bad that Sanji and Jin were still in the machine room, so they couldn't hear that. to feel a little appreciated as Dr. Kureha treated them. I can't believe that the captain had an older brother, and I have heard of him. Kuro said from his comfortable spot, on a chair with his legs bending and sitting on the toes of his feet. Fire Fist, Ace, 2nd Division commander of the Whitebeard Pirates. He is on the crew of a Yonko, 4 emperors, a pirate lord that is leagues above the Shichibukai, 7 warlords of the sea. As they are above the average level pirate that sails the Grand Line. Kuro brought in great detail, and with a grim tone. He grinned to see that most of the straw hats in the room were reacting like he predicted. Some are terrified at the thought while others were more interested in their new friend. Luffy did mention something like that. Zoro spoke up. Back in the town of the Cactus Mountains, while you all were sleeping in that party room, I had a drink with the captain and his girl. As for what were they doing up, I rather not say. Zoro dropped off momentarily to see if Luffy was aware of what he was saying. Thankfully it was just a mild glare, to say more about it, or more punishment. What did Luffy say? Usopp said, trying to get his nerves down. We are going against one, Crocodile, and is this Shichibukai pirate anything like Mihawk? Usopp felt proud with himself, talking about something so sensitive with a person like Zoro. He said that Crocodile is a good example of a Shichibukai, but he used a really ridiculous name and compared that with Mihawk. Zoro actually answered without a hitch. He said that both of those pirates can be considered equal in power. His audience was already mind blown. Especially after seeing the raw power that Mihawk used to overwhelm Zoro and in that stalemate against Luffy. But the Yonko and his grandfather consider them to be like children to their power, that is how powerful they are. I am starting to see the picture with the Yonko, but who actually is the captain's grandfather and why is it significant? Kuro started until he was cut off. Garp. Luffy's grandfather is Monkey D. Garp. Zoro said, and this sparked more interest and uneasiness in the room's atmosphere. Come to think of it, I even encountered that old man. He screams of real raw power that even Luffy is an ant compared to a dog. No one doubted Zoro, especially with a serious face like his, and no one said another word. But still, Luffy, Ace was relentless to say the least. Ace, please, we don't need a worse headache listening to you for another 1,000 times. Nami said as she was still in bed. Kureha made sure of it. Besides, you can relax since this is the day that the doctor promised to release me. Luffy won't be walking through blizzards or climbing any mountains soon. Not that I don't mind being on his back again. Nami had this dreamily look on her face while Luffy only blushed slightly and coughed in his hand. Ace answered only with a disappointed sigh and shaking his head in disbelief. Your girl is as bad as you are. Ace soon wished that he whispered much softer when he suddenly felt a rapier poking him in the neck. Not that it is a bad thing. Nami is my navigator as well as my girl, so yes, there is nothing wrong with that. Luffy said with an edge in his tone. So if you still have something to say about us, as the big brother, then say it. We have all day. To everyone in the room, it was hard to see who is the real big brother. Luffy's certainty knows how to get his point across, and Ace is supposedly 3 years older than the straw-hatted captain. One thing is for sure, those two have just redefined the term. Just then, come back here, Brad, and with those two, they haven't finished healing yet. That practically shook the entire castle, including the patient room where the straw hats and brother to the captain were waiting in. Luffy then got up and opened one of the doors, just in time for Chopper in his reindeer form to crash through. With Sanji and Jin thrown off his back, sliding right into the other side of the room. After promptly closing it, Luffy turned to Chopper. I can guess how she took your decision, Chopper. But did you really have to go overboard by getting these two idiots out of their healing machines? Luffy asked, ignoring the mutters from the blonde cook and man-demon saying that it wasn't. Luffy, we all need to go. The doctrine is on a rampage and I have no idea why. Chopper then ran off, trying to sound frantic realistically. But the pirates felt like humoring the reindeer by taking their words seriously. Hurry. Luffy, do you mind? My shoes have been stolen. Nami felt like being a drama queen and just wanted to be on her boyfriend's shoulders again. The captain didn't comply. Luffy was willing to be a slave to all but her needs. So where are we going, darling? Luffy took no notice of the teasing and answered in a serious tone. I think I have a good idea. Chopper's running away from Drum Island. XXXXX. Meanwhile, where's that stupid reindeer? Kureha was on a rampage alright, and with about 100 weapons strapped to her back. Swords, guns, spears, clubs, etc. I never taught him to disobey my word, and especially to run off with two stupid kids that haven't been healed yet. What kind of doctor does he think he is? Perhaps one that wants to go for his dream. Kureha then turned over to Dalton, still healing himself but is good enough to walk and stand the cold climate outside the castle. And I did notice that your sled is not in your shed like always. Running away, on my watch. Never. Kureha then shouted off and sprinted off towards the main exit of the castle, leaving behind the pile of weapons behind. Also, she left Dalton with a grin on his face. I know that the sled is gone because I saw it being dragged to the back door. Dalton shook his head that he inheritably tricked Kureha into a wild goose chase and just went off to his own plans. But while no one was looking, Kureha had actually settled in her office after disregarding all that extra baggage. "Chopper, you really are leaving? I never thought that in my 110 years as a doctor that I will feel this way for someone sailing away, not passing away. You brat and your stupid big brother had actually made me soft, and I will never forget that day." Flashback begins. "You want me to do what?" Kureha looked barely any different, but it was only our lifestyle extending a century. And she was looking at oddest par she had seen, which is saying something for how diverse and bizarre the world can be when it came to bringing two individuals together. "Please doctor. Chopper needs someone to take him in. I will be sailing with my teacher all the way to the new world. My little brother will be in great danger." Luffy was still in his training years and apparently, he had been to Drum Island before. Meanwhile, Chopper looked worst aware. It was like the little reindeer had went through hell and back, only to get a rude and painful welcoming. Luffy heard everything about what happened while his teacher was stationed on the island. It seemed that the quack doctor that made his living off of bad healing and stealing money had made Chopper his companion and looked after the young reindeer. But the doctor did all this since he was dying of an incurable disease. He was planning to die as someone that no one will miss. He will be in his dark little corner, all alone like he always was. But Chopper had changed his view on living. Then came that faithful day when Chopper had finally decided to repay the doctor for taking care of him. He will get a certain mushroom that the doctor said that he need, after completing a miracle that the doctor had tried for 30 years. That was while Chopper was beaten to a pulp, rugged down and even lost one of his antlers. But this was the start of a great tragedy in Chopper's life. Because what Chopper didn't realize, in all his innocence and childish view on reality, was that getting the mushroom and feeding it to his caretaker actually doomed the quack doctor. That mushroom was poisonous, killing the eater within an hour. And all Chopper had to say was that he saw the skull and crossbones next to the picture of it in a medicine book. And after this doctor said the symbol wasn't danger but the will to conquer the odds, to find a cure when help was never given. Luffy sensed this and spent a good several hours consulting Chopper, who seemed to never run out of tears. Then came the quack doctor's death, drinking a liquid explosive that blew himself up in front of a certain metal tyrant and formerly his castle. It was foolhardy that this quack doctor fell into an obvious trap, but no coward will end his life to leave something behind for the witnesses. That is why Luffy decided to up his training with his teacher and also convinced Chopper to give his life to learn medicine and how to be a doctor, to help and cure others no matter how sick they are. But Chopper will need a new caretaker and a teacher for real this time, which brings the duo to the witch doctor herself. "Brat, why would I take in a blue-nosed reindeer that walks and talks and got that quack killed?" Kureha was stubborn and so was Luffy. "Because he went out like a man and you have enough honor to do what his dying wish was," Luffy retorted. "I know that he asked you to take care of Chopper and he is going to be a doctor, so that's why. You don't know anything about me or that quack. You are just a brat with a reindeer in your arms that is just about to die. Why aren't you asking me to at least heal him?" Kureha argued back, and then Luffy got serious. "If you give a man a fish, he will eat for a day. If you teach him how to fish, he will eat for life." Luffy quoted out of the blue. "So, teach him how to be a doctor. You don't get to decide the fate of this reindeer. You're just a brat." Kureha was surprised that Luffy had the guts to keep the argument going. Most men were too scared to even argue back. Besides, this creature might learn medicine, but he was the one who poisoned that quack to death. And he was dying from an incurable disease in the first place. "No." Chopper then got out of Luffy's grasp and shouted into Kureha's chest. An incurable illness didn't kill him. It wasn't bullets, or bombs, or poison, it was that no one will remember him. "But I do, and he didn't die." Chopper shouted out what Kureha could have sworn to hear that old fool again. "I will be a doctor and I will cure everyone who is sick, because there is no such thing as an incurable disease." Flashback ends. Once Kureha had finished her little memory track, there was a knock on her door. "Dr. Kureha? We are ready and waiting. We still need your call." Kureha smirked at the sound of the townspeople that she had been pushing around, sounding so excited. Wiping her tears, Kureha got her bearings together and answered the door. "Then you will get my call when it is due. Now show me what you brats have finally finished." The elderly doctor had a reputation to uphold, and yet her visitors wouldn't have it any other way. XXXXX as for the brats themselves, Chopper had pulled it off. He actually found the king's gourd on his own. It was exactly like Luffy told him, so the reindeer was confident that he was going the right way. "Your ship is so cool, big brother." Luffy chuckled. It was cute as ever to see Chopper react that way. And he is supposed to be the age of a human teenager but still with the heart of a child. Thankfully he had the mind and knowledge of a real doctor. No more winging it for the Straw Hats. "Well, come on then, we are burning sunlight by just standing here," Luffy said, carrying his comfortable girlfriend still. Everyone else got out of the sled, with Sanji and Jin still out of commission to walk but not to complain about being held like a sack of potatoes. "Say, what did we miss?" Luffy then talked while looking down. At the otter who stayed behind with Zoro and Kuro before they decided to come along to the castle. Everyone almost forgotten about him. He says that it has been quiet except for the commotion he can hear clearly on the top of the biggest mountain. Chopper suddenly said, and the otter looked up in awe and shock. Chopper, thankfully, noticed that soon enough. Yes, I used to be an animal until I ate this fruit that allowed me to speak human but understand both. I hope we can be good friends. The otter then did something that no one could even picture. From under his tough exterior and sunglasses, the otter cried out in tears and hugged Chopper. The reindeer sure was surprised but did what Luffy always did for him, returned the favor and also the hug. It wasn't too heartbreaking, but who can deny the sight of creature finally revealing a side of being hurt and shunned for who knows how long. After that surprise moment, the Straw Hats went back to work on the ship, to get it ready to disembark off the island. They did pick a good time since the log pose was now pointing to a direction other than at Drum Island. It was just another matter of time that the log pose will restart again and the Straw Hats will lose sight of the next island. Of course, they didn't have any time for detours and can only hope that the log pose is pointing a lot like the eternal pose that was savaged back on Little Garden. Wow, the guys were right. You're a good artist. Usopp did his work and decided to try at drawing and painting, using the landscape and the mountains on the island as the model. I am amazed. Yokogao. 1. The otter nodded and went back to work. Usopp shrugged the response of indifference and continued his own art before he loses sight of his model. Elsewhere on the ship, you are a doctor? Chopper was sorting out his little blue backpack with everything a doctor will need when outside the office and patient room. Once he did that, most of the crew were surprised once again today. Yeah, I was the one that helped the doctor and heal Big Brother, Big Sister and those two idiots. Chopper responded with a childish innocent tone that made all but Jin and Sanji awe at the cute sight. Jin huffed while Sanji glared at the reindeer, threatening to make Chopper back up meat within his mind. But how exactly did you get the old lady to let you go? Ace asked, still having his cloak on for some reason. And everyone felt the urge to gush at Chopper, who just openly blushed and looked nervous before answering. Well, flashback begins. Hey Chopper. Acting around but flinched to hear the loud sound of his second caretaker and teacher in medicine. He silently scolded himself for thinking so lightly of Dr. Kureha. That woman is one of kind, alright. Where the hell do you think you're going? Don't you have herbs to crush, machines to maintain, needles to clean, and cells to sort out? Maybe you do, because I am leaving, Chopper shouted out while not very convincing in his tone. And I mean it. I promised Big Brother that when I got strong enough to beat Wapol, I will go on adventures with him. Must we go through this crap again? Kureha had a short fuse that just set off a chain reaction explosion. That brat nearly got himself killed on this mountain. All for a couple of idiots and a girl who couldn't wear her clothes in a jungle. He is not worth it. He is AD. Chopper felt that was ridiculous, but Kureha actually went silent to that piece of trivia. He then noticed her smirk. He is AD too, huh? Just like with that big-time brat who got himself executed. That reckless fool Gold D. Roger, Kureha thought to herself. Okay, I will take it back about the mountain climbing, but he still is a bad influence. I may have taught everything I know about medicine, but you still haven't got the experience yet to be a real doctor. You're still a child. I know, Chopper argued. I am thankful for taking care of me and teaching me medicine, but I have a dream and I can't achieve it if I stayed. Big Brother is going to sail with me to help me find the cure for all illnesses and diseases. I keep telling you, ungrateful brat, that there is no such thing, Kureha retorted. I still can't believe that I let myself take you in after that full speech and you actually spilling your guts about an impossible dream. Big Brother doesn't care and neither should I, but I want to see what the world have to offer. I want to learn more about medicine and become an even better doctor, Chopper fired back. Big Brother has an impossible dream, but he is going for it, so I should too. I want to be a man and I want to sail. If you are not going to change your mind, Kureha found it no use to play it safe with words, but with the rough way left to do. Then I will have to drag you to the machine room and nail you to my wall. Hey, come back. And just like that, Kureha will chase Chopper throughout the castle until the reindeer will reach the patient room, with an old lady on the hunt for blood and with 100 weapons to do it. Flashback ends. The little reindeer was about to go on until Luffy's arm stretched to pull Chopper from his backpack. You don't want to miss this, Chopper. It is about to begin. Chopper could have asked what his big brother meant when the whole crew saw it for themselves. The cloud above the mountains and white land of Drum Island used to be cold and merciless white. But then something was fired off the biggest mountain, from the castle on top. It was like a large rocket or firework cracker. But when it exploded, what was in that cloud was not fireworks. It coated the large cloud in the Sakura petal pink. Your teacher and guardian seemed to want you gone, Chopper. But that was so you can start sailing and see this before you go. Luffy then said, she really is an amazing woman, don't you think? I personally can't think of a better present for my little brother. Chopper was amazed and tear-stricken. The sky above Drum Island was not the usual white clouds filled with snow to fall. Instead, it was the Sakura flower petals that a great man said to be a very effective cure. And it healed the last hole in Chopper's heart. You're a doctor? Chopper was sorting out his little blue backpack with everything a doctor will need when outside the office and patient room. Once he did that, most of the crew were surprised once again today. Yeah, I was the one that helped the doctrine heal Big Brother, Big Sister and those two idiots. Chopper responded with a childish innocent tone that made all but Jin and Sanji awe at the cute sight. Jin huffed while Sanji glared at the reindeer, threatening to make Chopper back up meat within his mind. The little reindeer was about to go on until Luffy's arm stretched to pull Chopper from his backpack. You don't want to miss this, Chopper. It is about to begin. Chopper could have asked what his big brother meant when the whole crew saw it for themselves. The cloud above the mountains and white land of Drum Island used to be cold and merciless white, but then something was fired off the biggest mountain, from the castle on top. It was like a large rocket or firework cracker. But when it exploded, what was in that cloud was not fireworks. It coated the large cloud in the Sakura petal pink. Your teacher and guardian seemed to want you gone, Chopper. But that was so you can start sailing and see this before you go. Luffy then said, she really is an amazing woman, don't you think? I personally can't think of a better present for my little brother. Chopper was amazed and tear-stricken. The sky above Drum Island was not the usual white clouds filled with snow to fall. Instead, it was the Sakura flower petals that a great man said to be a very effective cure, and it healed the last hole in Chopper's heart. 398, a day on the seas started with a curious sight. A reindeer, doing push-ups, with a small pile of wooden crates on his back, while looking more like a tanuki. 399,400. Good work, Chopper. The reindeer finally lost feeling in his legs and fell to the deck. Thankfully that the weights didn't go down so roughly. A man's hand went right under and stopped them. And it only took 2 hours this time. You're getting it. Thanks, big brother, but how am I going to do what you guys do? Chopper had been struggling to get on his bottom with his legs and arms acting like jelly sticks. 400 is still the most I could do. How to get a higher exercise? Simple. Convince me to punish you. Luffy was the one overlooking Chopper's early morning exercise and answered with a twisted smirk on his face. Chopper then covered his mouth and eat his words without anyone seeing. Until then you will have to make do. Now to get the feeling back in your legs. Luffy pressed Chopper on the chest with a certain touch to his pointer finger. Chopper grimaced a little since Luffy's touch felt slightly more painful than a static shock. It was more like a small needle puncture that got the little reindeer to get all his energy back. We just had breakfast and we have a while before lunch, why not we go fishing? Fishing? Yeah. Chopper loved to spend time with Luffy, no matter how boring it looked to the other pirates. And when they got their gear, got on the railings, with Luffy's helping hand of course, they released their lines with bait on both hooks. After a short while it was nothing except for a few small but doable fish. Nothing to show off to your friends. Luffy knows well enough that fishing isn't something to bring your girlfriend to. That will just end it all right there. But then came the tornado from the kitchen that ruined their peaceful existence. Who ate all the food. Luffy and Chopper did a quick look at each other. Thankfully there wasn't a single crumb on their cheeks, so they were in the clear. But they then heard a couple of hearts beating fast, on their right. I mean you too, who ate all the food? Sanji still walked up to his captain and newly appointed doctor. He was too angry to listen to his conscience saying to forget about it. Try those 3, Sanji. At least we aren't so nervous that you can hear drums out of our chests. Luffy said with indifference, and Chopper looked to his right. It was Usopp and Karoo the large duck trying to fish themselves, but they had either a piece of bread or a raw streak in their mouths. Chopper then saw Sanji march over to the suspiciously fishing duo and spared his eyes from any nasty carnage that came with the sound of shoes meeting heads. As for you two, Sanji then turned away from punishing the food thieves and saw that Chopper had a big bite and Luffy was helping him. Since I don't have anything to work with, let me help. Whatever, Sanji, we can't let this catch get away, Luffy answered with indifference. The cook grabbed the captain like he is grabbing Chopper, around the chest. After several hard tugs, the trio knew that their catch was losing strength and it was only a matter of time before it was on the king's gourd. Except for one problem, their catch wasn't edible. Oh, thank you, I fell off my ship in a cloud of stupid, silly smoke. And I am a fellow who can't swim. The two men and reindeer didn't know what to make of this, but this character was so loud and dressed painfully poor. He got all hands on deck. I haven't told you my name, it is Bon Curé. Nice to meet you all kind pirates. Bon Curé is a relatively tall male cross-dresser who wears flamboyant ballet clothes with a swan theme. He dresses in a pink overcoat and blue medieval clothes. He wears heavy makeup and he often sports a distinct wide grin which often carries over when he changes his appearance. His legs, being exposed, are hairy. Underneath these clothes, his physique is fairly muscular. The number 2 is seen in the form of his swans, which are posed into a shape resembling the number 2. The back of his overcoat bears the kanji for Bon Festival. What gave us away that we're pirates? Luffy made the first question and the strange man just pointed up towards the sails and flag. Good point. So, do you not know how to swim or that I ate an Akuma no Mi, devil fruit? Those are the only ways for a harmless person like myself sinks like a cut loose anchor. Bon Curé answered with a cheery attitude that was as bad as his dress. In this case, I did eat one. Allow me to show you. Bon Curé then shot his hand out fast and enough force to send poor Usopp, who was in the range of fire, to be sent through wall. This got the crew on guard until they saw it. Hold it, I am not attacking, just demonstrating. That wasn't the strange man's voice at all, nor was his face. It was all Usopp's. What the hell? Everyone shouted out and Bon Curé laughed using Usopp's voice in a creepy fashion. Do I look like that silly looking fellow with the ridiculous nose? This is my power? The power of the cane no am I. Clone fruit. Bon Curé laughed even harder than before. All I have to do is make contact with a person using my right hand and I can completely copy them while always needing a change in clothes. Meanwhile, with my left hand, the impersonator of Usopp moved his left hand to his cheek and reverted back to normal. I change into my real form. Luffy decided that it was harmless for now and allowed the cross-dressing devil fruit user to touch almost everyone. Sanji kicked away Bon Curé's hand, Kaya was defended by Usopp, Ace moved out of the way and Vivi hid behind Luffy. Now do you see? Bon Curé then touched his cheek with his right hand again, changing into Zoro. Now that, then he did Luffy. I have my right hand, now Chopper. Has memorized your faces. He then went to Kuro. I changed my face into every single one. Finally, he became Nami. And this time, Luffy's nerves were on edge. That was his instincts and they never were wrong. And that is same for my bod R. Bon Curé had set Luffy off when he reached of his coat, still impersonating Nami, and earned a rightful punch to the cheek that sandwiched both him, Luffy's fist and the mast of the king's gourd. We get the point and none of that about Nami and especially in front of my little brother. Luffy soon released his fist to grasp her stand. Bon Curé muttered and tried to nod his head while it was still in Luffy's grip. Good and Nami dear, handle the other pervert please. Luffy pointed to a certain blonde on board that was hoping to see what Bon Curé will reveal about the navigator. Instead, the sound of a head harshly bonked and a door closed almost to the point of falling off. Now then, is that all you can do? Have we seen all the faces? Bon Curé recovered from his rude but necessarily honorable interruption to press his right hand on his cheek. Not at all, see the rest of my collection, and thankfully, all he did was swipe and switch his faces to insignificant men. But there was just one face that sent Vivi over the edge and Luffy spotted it too. It was the one of a middle-aged man that gave off the atmosphere of being some kind of high authority figure, especially with the black sharp beard, in the shape of a straight hook. Sir, there you are. Bon Curé stopped his display to see a rather flamboyant ship, fitting of his need to copy others in cross-dressing. Built with a swan theme, the ship had a swan's head and was white in color. Another feature were hand-operated paddle wheels. Its size is similar to the Going Merry. It has Okama Way written on the sail, as well as on the ship itself. It's my friends in our ride to where we desperately need to be, the Swanda Express. Bon Curé got excited and hopped onto the railings but he did turn over to the straw hats. Thanks again for fishing me out. I hope that we will meet again as real friends. And just like that, the Okama crossdresser had disappeared along with his silly-looking ship. But while the crew was glad to get rid of him, Luffy and Vivi weren't so sure. The captain himself especially when he heard one of those sailors call Bon Curé, Mr. 2. XXXXX, pardon me Ace-san. Vivi walked up to Ace once an island of sand and sand winds was in sight. Shouldn't you take that cloak off? Not that you will get sunstroke but too much covers in the desert will get you heatstroke. Vivi then noticed that Ace didn't look so worried. Thanks for the concern princess. Ace was told everything about this big mess of the Alabasta kingdom that is centered around Vivi. But I assure you that I am not a man to get neither. Heat and sunlight can't harm me in any way. It is just how I am. Okay then, half of us will go looking for clothes suited for the weather here while we see how much water we can afford here in this town. Luffy then said. I will take Usopp, Kuro and Ace along while everyone else goes to the market. Don't let any perverts do the choosing, no matter how much it looks on you. We are going to trek a desert, not ride on a parade. The crew straightened and fled, leaving the ones Luffy chose behind. This of course made Ace chuckle nervously. He sure didn't act according to the third strongest pirate in the Whitebeard pirate crew. You still have that touch huh? Ace retained that shaken tone and Luffy just shrugged. It's one way to keep them together and I am sure that any woman in my crew is good enough to handle themselves. Luffy responded casually. Now let's get going. Later, SSH, Luffy shushed his crewmates and accompanying older brother who were each carrying a barrel of water. Kuro and Ace were no surprise. Usopp was the one who was proud of himself for showing real, manly, strength for the first time. Luffy's training is hell but effective. What is asterisk? Asterisk. The sniper in question was about to ask his captain until it hit him too. Kuro made the same twitch in his throat and face while Ace didn't say a word about it. Two signatures were heading their way along with a mess of lower ones. And these were no stranger to them either. Looks like Smoker finally got permission to leave Logatown to come after us. thinking that he is the successor to the role my grandpa had against Roger. Luffy answered, with that second sentence under his breath. But if they are here, that means the Marines have gotten word of what Crocodile is doing in this land. But how? Usopp tried to ask once again, but Kuro stopped him. The Marines are not all moral and good like they want us to think. My best guess is that they heard about everything by wiretapping, Kuro explained, showing that he is still a genius but not for devious and plans for money anymore. The Marines have access to a special Den Mushi, transponder snail, that is small and black. It can intercept the wavelengths between two regular Den Mushi. I have found this out years ago, and that is how I decided to not use such technology again. The risk was too great for a pirate to try. So, if they are here, then they will even attempt to capture us. And trouble with the Marines will just delay us even further from getting to the center brain of Baroque works. Luffy said. Let's go. And when they were starting to run, Straw Hat, Luffy cursed that they were found out anyways. Don't think that you can hide after how your crew were spotted. We might as well get you first. Luffy was just glad to see no deception in that remark. Not one of his crewmates had been taken in yet. But he was still true to his word. Let's go, guys. We've overstayed our welcome here. Kuro and Usopp agreed and got a head start towards the King's Gourd. Luffy and Ace soon followed after them. But once the ship was in sight, Ace stopped and turned towards the incoming Marines. Hold it, Luffy. Ace suddenly said, grasping the straw-hatted pirate by the shoulder, facing Smoker and getting a lot of eyes to face their way. I've heard about you beating Smoker before in the East Blue. Ace continued and didn't even turn away from the oncoming Marines. Now it is my turn to have some fun. I've learned a few things here in the Grand Line. And I can't with this thing on. Ace finally tugged at his cloak and threw it off to show his real appearance. Although they were not blood-related, Ace did look remarkably like Luffy. However, Ace looked of the age 3 years older and more mature than his younger brother. He also sported rather childish freckles. But Ace's most remarkable feature was his tattoo. Ace had it on his upper left bicep that spells ASCE, vertically. He wore black boots, black knee-length shorts with an eyelet-studded orange belt, and a blue pouch belted around his left leg. He also wore a short second belt with a large red A on the silver buckle over his right hip, but left it unfastened and threaded the free end along the back of his shorts. A dagger in a green sheath hung at his left hip. On Ace's left arm, he wore a log pose and a red and white striped bracelet around his wrist, an orange elbow guard, and his ASCE tattoo. He wore a red beaded necklace and an orange hat with 2 blue smileys, one frowning and one smiling, and a string of red beads sitting above the rim. 2 long orange side straps hung down sides of his hat and met at a large medallion of a bull's skull with orange tassels. Fire Fist, Smoker growled. If you are here, then I will have to arrest you too. Hoedo Buro, White Blow, Smoker shot out a trail of smoke to both attack and immobilize not only Luffy but his cloaked brother. Kagero, Sun Flare, Ace shouted out, and out of his hand came a burst of flames that stopped the Hoedo Buro from reaching Smoker's targets. This shocked most of those witnessing this conflict, except for a select few. So, you did eat a fruit, and now who is going to save us from drowning, Ace? Luffy remarked very casually. Of course, they couldn't think of a much more obvious moniker, can't they? Ace then looked submissive again and acted like a kid with his hand in the cookie jar. Yes, Luffy. You got me. I discovered and ate the Mera Mera no Mi. Flame fruit. This explained a lot about Ace, the lack of snow on the winter island of Drum, and that Ace saying he can't get heatstroke earlier. In Jomo, Flame Fence. This time, Ace swiped one of his arms across and conjured up a circle of flames around the Marines. That will hold for a few hours, plenty of time to get back on track. Ace, his younger brother, and his crew were about to say. Now I need to get going because I still have a mission to do by the old man. Oh, Whitebeard EH. Luffy answered. Then can you deal with those ships out there? Their signatures are giving me a headache here. Luffy pointed back on the harbor where a long line of ships with the symbol for Baroque works on their sails. Ace didn't say a word, he just moved in a blur and jumped off the pier. Thankfully he showed that he attached his sailing vehicle to the King's Gourd, the one that he called the Striker. The Striker is a waterproof, one-man, yellow raft shaped like a half-crescent. It has an engine in the back, 2 paddle wheels on the sides, and a small sail in the back. Everything is linked to the main seat in the middle of the raft. This was shown when Ace turned his feet into flames that turned the propeller engine fast enough to move to one end of the armada of enemy ships. Not a problem. Ace said to himself and charged for the Baroque Works ships, only to jump high above the sails while the Striker delved underneath. Once Ace moved to the other end, the Striker appeared and caught Ace before the pirate commander made his move. Heiken, Fire Fist. Ace sent out a giant-sized flow of fire that plowed through the armada easily. If this doesn't impress you, little brother, then I will love to fight you again. Fire Fist Ace then disappeared to who knows where, doing only he knows what. But Luffy just couldn't shake the feeling that his older brother was walking to his doom. XXXXX, remember everyone. We will go this way until the site of a small town is in sight. Vivi said once they were getting suited up to head from the port of Nanohana, where they docked at, through the desert to stop at the little town of Yuba. Then head to where Crocodile's base was. The capital of the Sandy Kingdom, Alubarna. We do have enough water for the trek, so we should restock in Yuba. And you guys should know that since I am sure Nami didn't let Sanji chose the clothes for the crew. Luffy said responded with a huff. He was a guy who will hold a grudge once his crew disobeyed his word. But Luffy, while I can't deny that Nami, Vivi, Alvida, Kaya, Grace and Carol are mature women. Cue the blushing women. Even desert dancers wear heavy clothing. I don't want them getting burns because you didn't think of that, genius. Now cue the remaining straw hats nodding. If only Sanji wasn't just a shameless pervert, he will actually get pity. And if he wasn't a good cook or a strong fighter, he would have been left behind. Another thing to remember, you guys. Zoro then said. No doubt that copying Crossdresser is going to be our enemy if he works for Crocodile. But even if they do figure out how we can tell each other apart, he still won't fool any of you. This time, no one argued or glared. Just looked at the white cloth on their left arms. This was more than a way to stick out in a crowd or fool the world's best impersonator. It was something else entirely. Something that will bond them forever.